All right, ladies and gentlemen, I do believe I am live. It is late at night. I didn't expect to do this tonight, so I actually just woke up from a late night nap because a few months ago I stopped a job where I used to work really late at night, so I'm still used to actually working really, really late in the evening. So I'm trying to break that, but here it is, near midnight. I've just woke up from a nap, and I am having my first beer of the day at near midnight, so it's terrible, but that does allow us the opportunity to, I should stop this. This is just because I was rebooting the computer and was listening to Tom Petty. I don't like Tom Petty particularly, but listened to him a bit in high school, so let's get upset about Mr. Cropper's a Tom Petty fan. All right. I believe Lee Ram the Great will be joining us, and we will be discussing broad philosophical topics of one kind or another, including interesting things. You can join, that's right, I've got the link. I'm putting a link over on the far right side. You can join in, and you don't have to be a popular kid to join the Hangouts. Just realize that you're hanging out with the popular kids, so try to say something right, you know? So I think that what I'm about to do over there will work, although we haven't had much luck in the past. Now, so you can join by clicking the link in the far right-hand side. I will be discussing Wolfram, Stephen Wolfram, in a couple of days. That'll be Monday night, so that's 3 days away. And his work is extremely important and very seminal, so I don't want to talk about too much about that tonight. Trump, I think, is interesting. The Orlando shooting is interesting. That's good. What I do want to mention that objectivists that I haven't talked to, that I have talked to, haven't mentioned enough, I don't think, is just talking about space. And I know that objectivists tend to be more down to earth and sort of, Mr. Hornbuckle has joined me. Let me just finish what I was saying about NASA real quick.
Take your time.
Objectivists like Mr. Hornbuckle here are too down to earth to care very much about what kind of robot we've recently spent to what faraway rock. And they aren't really, really worried about whether or not we have a future of colonies on Mars. So that's something we might touch on if that happens. Mr. Hornbuckle, what can we do for you? What do you bring to our late evening table here?
Well, not much. Just
Oh no, there's been a fail of some kind. He's in New York City, so there's undoubtedly been some sort of terrorist attack. The Orlando thing's interesting. Aren't we waking up a bit? I mean, you used to could say, well, when it's in their face and the bomb blows up in their neighborhood, they'll figure it out. You can't say that very much anymore about the leftists and Democrats and gays and whoever these people are. Also, here's what we should probably drive on a bit. We should start, or there should be started, a Muslims Against Sharia in America group on Facebook, and a Muslims Against Terrorism Facebook group, and a Muslims Against Beating Women, and Muslims Against Child Rape. We should start like a dozen different Muslim against groups, where they're trying to correct some of these problems with Islam. And see how many Muslims join. That would be hilarious, wouldn't it? So why do we not see these sorts of groups? Why are Muslims not doing this? I'll give you 50 guesses. That's right, because Muslims are the fucking problem. You know, it's been pointed out that mosques are not churches. The word church means something. It has a meaning. It means where you go to learn about spiritual whatever. And it is specifically divided from politics, specifically. in concept, if not in fact. The word mosque has no such division. They are not churches. They are political fifth columns. That is not an exaggeration, and it's not euphemism. That's a strict definition of a mosque, is a political fifth column. So, well, Mr. Hornbuckle was on for a moment, and he failed to come back around. Well, since I don't know how I got off on mosques and stuff, I can give you 5 guesses on how that happened. But let's talk a little bit more about what I was saying about space, why I think it's important to do the space thing. Now, if you think of space as the trip to the moon being some massive historical thing where 3 men set foot on the moon, that's going to be difficult for you to understand what it's going to mean, space. But space is actually 100 miles away from us. It's above every single one of us. And so you've made trips of thousands of miles to go do things. Imagine making a trip of 100 miles. Okay? That's easy. Literally 5 minutes. Get in the rocket, it blasts off, you're in space. Now, if we have a better way to do that, probably there will be tubes that are evacuated of air, and you will be shot on an electric cannon through the tube, and by the time you're going fast enough, you reach escape velocity, you'll come out the end of the tube and just go right into orbit around the Earth. And it won't take any rocket fuel or blast off. There will be no explosion. It'll just be an electrical tube you get in, like an airplane tube, shoot you right up into orbit. Then you got teeny tiny thrusters, and rocket engines and stuff can do a lot of work in outer space when all you've got is the weight of the aircraft, the mass of the aircraft, I mean, not the weight. So there are lots of things that we can do in space and make it cheaper to get there. And if we can get there in numbers that I'm talking about, Elon Musk's plans become interesting. He's talking about sending a spaceship with 100 people on it to Mars every 6 months for 10 years. You know, and just that'll be program number 1, and then we'll run other programs with that as we go. But once we get there, it's only a matter of time till the first Martian really exists, because the first Martian will be the first person born on Mars. And of course, they're going to have to do scientific testing to see if you can have babies on Mars or in space or whatever. But these massive, massive rockets that Elon Musk wants to send are going to have artificial gravity, because the rocket will come up and then it separates into 2 parts, one part of one thing or whatever, like engine and the other bit. And then a cord is between them, and it'll spin around on that cord. And in the far end of each of those, the spinning motion, the centrifugal force, creates what we call artificial gravity. So they will have gravity if they go to Mars. They'll send one of those every 6 months. They have the rockets. They're using the rockets that I'm talking about. They would send these ships to Mars. Those rockets are available and in use now. It's a single rocket they use to send up a satellite. Put 2 boosters, one on each side, and you can do a lot more work. Put 3 boosters around it, you can do even more work. Because each time you add the booster, you're not adding the weight of all the nose and everything again. So you can add more weight per pound thrust with each new booster than you could with the original booster. Now, if you put 7 boosters around the base of one of those main big rockets, it would be way more powerful than the Atlas that sent men to the moon. So I think that's what we have coming. We might stop off at the moon. I think it'll be a tourist destination, maybe. It's really dangerous, so they'll have to make it very carefully. Moon dust and stuff, it's not funny stuff. So they'd have to be careful to send tourists there, but it might at least be a scientific destination. I mean, what university wouldn't like to send people for 3 weeks to the moon if they had a rotating system of scientists going through to the moon? Okay, that would probably happen. Like you say, why would that happen? Well, it's happening in South Antarctica. No, it's happening all over Antarctica, at the one big station and whatever. You can look into that. There's rotating scientists in and out to investigate Antarctica. Why not the moon? So we could do that just as practice in the technology and stuff, but there are a lot of people who say it's not necessary. And so that's what I'm in favor of, is send a big, huge rocket to Mars. Now, don't let NASA do it. Shut NASA down and burn it. Or have it be the slave of the private economy. It's really, really a waste. It's okay for Congress to make rules like, for certain things of extraordinary national interest, you have to purchase from suppliers within the United States, and the American suppliers have to get their supplies within the United States. For example, rocket engines. That Congress could make a justification that we shouldn't spread that technology around the world, we shouldn't promote others to develop that technology, and we should be self-reliant as far as that technology goes. But when you try to do that with carpets and air conditioners and hats, then you're screwing with the economy real bad. Only with cutting edge stuff where you've got an upper hand is it okay to sort of take control of the economy in that way. So that's my view of also that. I guess that segues us into Trump. He wants to have these trade wars. And he wants Carrier, the air conditioning company, to come back from Mexico. Are you kidding me? What American wakes up in the morning and says, gee, you know what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to try to become air conditioner specialist. Thousands of them. I know. So let them do it, but don't make Carrier stay here. Let them go to Mexico. Talk about it in the press. Try to boycott them if you want. But when people go down to the local store and there's a Carrier air conditioner for $99 and some made in America stuff that's crappy and doesn't work as well for $199 or $149 or whatever, they're going to buy the $99 one. And they're going to take it home, and if it breaks, they're going to go buy another one and say, whatever, I just spent the same money I bought on one earlier anyway. Because stuff's cheaper when you get it from abroad. So, because you're not paying some American who has so many options in life what to do. Mr. Hornbuck, are you back on?
Hey, sorry about that. My computer crashed.
No problem. This is the first confirmation we've got that it wasn't a terrorist attack, because we've all been thinking you were hit by a terrorist attack. So.
Well, based on my Facebook post, I could be on a list. Let's not deny it.
They not only do the Muslims have it out for you, I think Facebook's going to have it out for you, and all of us that post these rational things. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, that would be an interesting conversation right there.
Listen, I've been talking my face off waiting for someone to come on now. Why don't you say something while I take a quick drink of my beer right here? Sure.
Am I the only one on here?
So far, yeah. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, the far right-hand side is the link to join. Is that how you got on here, Jason?
I saw this link posted on your Facebook.
Ah, you can also get on the FB and get
Came up in my feed.
Very good.
I think there's a little bit of a misnomer though. It says late night Thursday hangout.
Yes.
Now, you are aware this is Friday night, right?
Well, let me think about that.
I don't know.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
I know you're out there away from the city, and I don't know, maybe you lose track of time, and that's cool.
No, I knew midnight was coming, and I glanced at the clock and made everything wrong.
It's actually Saturday.
Yes, exactly. So no, that would be the effect of waking up at 11 p.m. from a 4-hour nap, because I worked that job where I worked till 4 a.m. for a year, and I just quit that, a couple of months ago. So if your personal clock, you get home at 4 a.m., that means you have a beer and shower at 6 a.m. So that's a rough clock I'm on right now. So right now I'm like,
that is a rough clock.
Liram, geez, it's been 20 minutes. I've been waiting.
You didn't put a link.
I put links everywhere.
For like 10.
I put links everywhere. Mr. Hornbuckle couldn't avoid the situation.
Oh, I couldn't find a situation.
I found the link on this New York subway on the way home. It was right.
See?
Mm-hmm.
That's
actually a good idea. I can put some up for you if you want.
Yeah, I used to do that.
Jason,
Mexico.
Jason, could you tell us what you think is going on with your friends in New York? How many people, friends, acquaintances in your personal life, do you have any anecdotes about what's going on with reaction to the LGBT community thing, because they're big in New York? Are they upset about Orlando? They have solidarity with Muslims on the ground level? I don't know what. You might not have anything to say. I don't know.
Well, I can't really comment. Unfortunately, I don't have a big circle of friends here.
I'm just
That
riffing.
would be in that community. Yeah, I mean, I've been working so much that I only have really just a handful of really important friends that I hang out with on a regular basis. So I wouldn't be able to really give a barometer of that.
I
I
think
mean, I do
Brandon
have
was
gay
the one
friends,
that
but I
gay.
don't. I can't think of anyone I've spoken to lately here that has commented. Although I have got into some Facebook discussions with people about this and experienced some very strange argumentation. But I don't know where these people were from, so I don't know where they were. They might not have been in New York. So I'll just make one comment on what I've seen on Facebook.
Yeah, because that was what I was referring to. I guess that person isn't like a friend of yours in the city or whatever.
Oh, that I spoke to you about. Yeah. Yeah. No, they're not. I don't even know who. They're not even a Facebook friend of mine. They were just a mutual friend of a Facebook friend that commented on. So I suggested that there you go. What is that? The Miller Lite? What is that? Are you living the high life? Oh, natural light. Is that like natural rights beer?
It's possibly.
Natural rights beer. Uh, Lockean hops. So, I was on. So this would be an interesting thing to discuss. Okay. I am friends with a man who is a very intelligent man. I have a lot of respect for him. But he had posted a question about, actually, there's a whole bunch of people that are in this community called Less Wrong. Have you guys heard of this community?
Less wrong.
So
No, not familiar.
I can't really say too much about it because I haven't. There's a website if you Google Less Wrong. Who's the guy that started? His name is something like Eliza Udalowski or something. I totally butchered that. He wrote a fan fiction about Harry Potter called Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I think the Less Wrong name refers to trying to become less wrong, trying to achieve objectivity and identify personal thinking biases that you might have that would lead you into drawing irrational conclusions about things. Which obviously, hey, I'm all in favor of that. And some of this to me just seems like being in favor of clear, rational thinking and learning to identify thinking fallacies. But I have experienced a lot of people that I've spoken to in that community seem to have a very specific attitude about thinking, which is all statistical analysis. And I could be wrong about this, so I just want to say that I really don't know much about that, and so I could be totally wrong. And I do intend to actually read some of his stuff and read his Harry Potter fan fiction to have a better understanding. But there is a Facebook discussion that I was in, and somebody was wondering about the shooting in Florida, and they were kind of looking at it as from a statistical point of view, like they were thinking that it seems like there's more criminal activity from second-generation immigrants as opposed to first-generation immigrants, and why is that? And they were looking at that attacks or that crime specifically, and I was thinking about this, and my first thought was, well, And there's a lot people could say about that. But my first thought was, well, this is the wrong classification to classify this as a crime. This was really an act of war or a jihad attack, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's the rational conclusion. Now, is it possible that you could think this guy really was just kind of in his mind, it was just a crime of hatred, and he didn't see himself as being part of a bigger movement?
Well,
It's possible, but not based on what I've read. But yeah,
I'll tell you what. Let me tell you what I think of that, because he pledged allegiance to ISIS. So what should what should happen? The FBI, of course, gets into it because it's a crime inside our border. But then the State Department immediately gets involved and says, "Now, who did he say?" And they'd say, "Well, he said ISIS." And then the State Department's involved. So then the State Department, if they don't, let's just look at this in a vacuum and pretend there's nothing else around. The State Department says, "Who?" and goes to ISIS and knocks on ISIS's door and says, "Hey, is there anything you're saying that might commit someone to some sort of crime like this that we've experienced here in America?" And if ISIS says, yeah, we're quite in favor of that crime, then we blow the frickin' hell out of their whatever. Then we're at war with them. But the fact that that's how it should have happened. That's how it should happen. He says ISIS is good, so you call ISIS and say, "What are you saying?" But we know enough about ISIS already. So we should just blow them out of the goddamn water, and we should have been for. But we've got a commander-in-chief who is out of control. You know about the crime wave that's coming, right? The 40,000 felons that he's released.
Well, I know about all the immigrants he's trying to bring in. I don't know about the felons.
Yeah, and Homeland Security or whatever, the Border Patrol down there are not allowed to stop immigrants anymore. They say just let them get to the towns and get taken care of by the welfare system or whatever, and get into the system, and we'll sort them out legally. So they just let them just stream across the border now. They don't stop them anymore. But yeah, any non-violent crime offender can petition to be released. So if you're in for only drug offenses, you can petition to be released. And I heard a lawyer talking about this. He said the problem is sometimes we get people on drug charges, but they're real scumbags. They're wife beaters, and they're forged checks and stuff, and we never get them on anything. And then one day we find them with an ounce of cocaine in the car, and we put them away for 40 years, and Obama's letting them out now. And they're hardened criminals. 40,000 of them. Not all of them are. Some of them are just they were growing pot plants. But anyway, I don't know how I got on that, but Obama's killing us.
Yeah, well, just to go back to what you said, I mean, you were talking about, hey, this whole progression, let's find out, let's call up ISIS, and say, look up, and say, hey, have you guys been saying anything? But the thing is, we already know what they've been saying, because they made international declarations and requests for people all over the world to take up arms and engage in jihad attacks during Ramadan. So, but the person on this thread, so basically I just made a suggestion that, hey, I think you're looking at this wrong. Like, this is not something to be analyzed in a statistical way, because you're dropping the context that this is actually part of a movement that is actually a war against the United States and against the West in general. And it can't really be understood unless you bring that context into it. And then I got a bunch of other people that I don't even know, that aren't even my friends on Facebook, came in and they basically jumped on me, and they're like, "Oh, there's no evidence whatsoever this had anything to do with Islam, and he wasn't, you're just full of Islamophobia, anti-Muslim bigotry, and all this stuff." And so the woman said that it looks like this guy was just probably a closet homosexual who used the request from ISIS as an excuse to build up the courage to just take out to basically go in and kill these people as way to avoid facing his own homosexuality. Like, in other words, he was so afraid to face his own homosexuality that he projected it onto other people to kill them, but he didn't have enough courage to do that by himself. So he used the ISIS thing just to give him the courage to do what he was really after, which was just projecting his self-hatred. So this whole crazy psychological theory, and so okay, this is the thinking process. Okay, so let's take all of this, all the context, all the evidence that's right before our eyes, like the fact that there is an actual jihad movement against the West that has been for quite a while, that we have the attacks all over the place, all over the world this month. I don't know how many. You can actually go to a really good website. I'll pull it up here in a little bit that documents every jihad attack. We've got, I think it's something like over 500 already in the world just this month during Ramadan. It's fucking ridiculous. You see what's going on in the Middle East over and over again. It's not isolated to any individual, any group. You stop one leader, you kill one leader, you destroy one group, another group pops up. And it's the behavior that you see with Al-Qaeda, with ISIS. It's not unique, and it didn't just come into existence because of American foreign policy. It existed before America even existed as a country. It existed in the 7th century when Muhammad started the religion, and it's continued every century since. So you look at this entire context, and you just throw it all out the window and ignore it all and say, you know, I think the guy is just afraid to face his own homosexuality. That's what explains it. We're going to ignore all that. Now, is it possible that that is the real motivation, that he was really just really couldn't face his own homosexuality? Yeah, it is possible. I mean, but what's the evidence? You can't just make arbitrary assertions. You've got to bring in evidence, and more importantly, you can't just arbitrarily throw out all the actual evidence.
Well, I think we should, let's give them that. Let's give your friend that and say, okay, you're right. It was just a rationalization about his homophobic self.
Theoretically possible.
Yeah, let's say a psychologist looked into it and said that was the root cause. The State Department still needs to get involved because he was inspired by and given instruction by some foreign entity that made his insane thing, which he should have gone to a psychiatrist about, turn into a murder spree. So he could have just done like his friend might have come find him cutting his veins one night, or he took a bunch of ibuprofen and claimed to be doing an overdose or something. He could have done something silly like that to deal with his life and come out and tell his wife, I've been sleeping with men. But no, he went and shot up a club because he had this foreign entity, ISIS, that was preaching this. So it becomes a real serious problem, not because they might convert real, intelligent, long-term committed followers, but because they might cause mayhem and murder. That's the problem, by any means, whether the followers were some unintelligible mental idiot or not. It doesn't matter whether the guy was mental. The fact is, ISIS gave the instruction for people to do this. He followed ISIS's instructions, and we should lay it right on ISIS's doorstep immediately with many, many bombs.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I agree. We should.
Yeah, but what do we do about the people who are nutcases like the ones you're talking about? I don't know. Slap them?
Let's. Here, there is one interesting question. I know. Okay, hold on. I know Ron wants to speak, but
yeah, let's leave it.
Sorry, I just want to make one more point, and then I'll be quiet.
All right, Lee Ram, you'll get it in just a second.
Yeah, thank you, and then I will be quiet. There is, well, actually, you know what? I don't. If he's got something to say now, he should, because I'm going to bring up. I think the person does bring up a valid question, though. Of when is a person actually part of a war? But maybe he wants. Maybe the Ram wants to say something first before I change to that point.
Yeah, sorry about the interrupt, and I think it was a very, in Israel this stuff happens literally all the time. I mean, I think just last No, it was really close to the Orlando attack. There was a guy who went into a mall, shot up 4 people, injured 7. And this is not, breaking news, but it's something that happens a lot. And I think really the term is when someone is treasonous. And what's the definition of treason? Betraying one's country, especially by attempting to kill or overthrow the sovereignty of the government. So I think there should really, really be more strict definitions of treason and what it entails. That guy was a criminal, but on top of that, he also is guilty for treason. And so is his dad, by the way, who's trying to justify this by abetting a hostile power. So anyone who abets a hostile power is guilty of treason.
It'd be nice if we could convict someone of treason, like say we convict him of treason in absentia or posthumously, and then we could investigate. We had to have bylaws that would allow us to investigate his immediately family and friends by association, because treason's such a high crime. So
we have that as well.
Guilt by association is a concept that's against our Constitution, but for Congress may make laws for treason and crimes on the high seas and stuff. We could probably use that clause to get away with having a subclause somewhere that says if you can convict someone of treasonous behavior, you can investigate their family and friends, and then we would find out more about the people around him and how many of them are involved with terrorist-type stuff.
And that's why we have those laws.
And none of that matters because the FBI's in cahoots with Obama and given stand down. You heard the FBI's been told to scrub data that they have on terrorists and stuff.
Yep, heard about it.
All right, Jason, do you want to continue with the point you were working on?
Sure, yeah. So this does bring up an interesting question, though. I mean, what some of the people said on the thread was basically this guy is not part of ISIS or engaging in the... He has not properly joined the war with ISIS just because he pledged his allegiance. Their attitude was, well, unless he actually had communication with ISIS or actually, like, spoke to them, got weapons or money wired to him, but he is not actually part of them. And this is an interesting thing because in some ways there's a legitimate point there in the sense that ISIS in one sense is declaring like, hey, if you are a Muslim, do these things, engage in jihad. Now, obviously, if anyone chooses to do that, they alone are responsible for making that choice. I'm not trying to say that he wasn't responsible. But this brings up an interesting question. Now, I personally think I do see it as an act of war because even if you're just one individual, you can still engage in an act of war, I believe. Because it's not a crime because a crime is aimed at violating the property rights in person of an individual or individuals, and that's it. An act of war is the intent is to bring down the government or to destroy the particular implementation of laws in a certain geographical area. It's to push a new set of laws or political politics, and that is what a jihad attack is.
Let me make a proposal and see if you can make a distinction where it would be different or important to define it as an act of war or not. Because we locked up how many Japanese people, not assuming that they were going to get into contact with the Japanese government and be told to do something wrong, just assuming that they might possibly act as fifth columnists on their own without being told what to do. So we weren't, for us, it wasn't a question, why did this Japanese guy come into a grocery store with a butcher knife and take hold of a woman at the throat and, cause a scene? we didn't care about that. We were at war with Japan anyway, and we were going at it full effing throttle no matter what. Now, if we had that attitude with ISIS, it wouldn't matter what we said about the Orlando thing. The only thing we would, because we would be at full throttle war against ISIS. That's the justifiable thing right now. Full throttle war, let's say, and yet here's this Orlando thing. Then our response should be, okay, double down on looking at mosques, double down on looking at Muslims, especially ones who have gun permits or whatever. This is where it's scary. I don't think the government should have anything to do with gun ownership, but they do, and there we are. So I think that if we were doing our job already and fighting ISIS already, it wouldn't matter to say whether or not this guy was committing an act of war. You could just say, big crime, fifth columnist, inspired by ISIS. And like I said, lay that right at ISIS's door. But, okay, now given what I've just said there, do you still will you still make a case that it was an act of war and that that's a significant and important thing? And then I'll let Lee Ram go once you answer me.
Well, it is an interesting question. I think it still is an act of war because, like I said, I think, he has an otherworldly view. He thinks that any jihad attack, even by yourself, I think could be considered an act of war if you think it's going to be effective. You might be crazy to think that, but because you don't think you're just going to die and that's it. You're looking for an afterlife, and you think your efforts are going to go on and help bring down the government, even if you're gone. But the question is, what would be required to join ISIS, to be part of ISIS? And that's really determined by ISIS. And ISIS has made it clear that in order to join us, all you have to do is pledge allegiance and go on the warpath and go on jihad. You don't have to meet us. You don't have to shake our hands. You don't have to come to Syria and shake al-Baghdadi's hands. You don't have to communicate or get money from us. Just take whatever resources you have available and do what you want. And they're connected because they share a religion. Yeah. And so I do think that he's part of ISIS because he chose to be. Because ISIS made it. They didn't set up an application process he had to go through. They didn't set up, a Congress where people had to vote or to include people in military training. They just said, you do it and you're on the team. And he did, as far as the evidence suggests.
That's funny. You just gave me like a Kurt Vonnegut novel type idea where President Obama solves our Islamic terrorism problem by forcing ISIS to have an application process. And then if people haven't been approved by ISIS to be terrorists, then we can say that they were just lone actors. And all of a sudden, 0 terrorist attacks in America because none of them have ever been approved through the ISIS system. So anyways,
That's great. That points out the absurdity of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's Obama in action, I'm afraid. All right, I'll let Lee Ram go. Go ahead, Lee Ram. So only groups can commit war, but wasn't he part of ISIS?
I don't know. It depends what you count as being part of a group. I mean, ideologically, he's a so-called fellow traveler, but I wouldn't say he's part of a group. I mean, he had no contact, no affiliation, no tips, no support, no actual support, other than moral support, which was very, very grim. Because you can have moral support from groups that are long dead.
Well, make a better case because Jason just addressed all of those because he said ISIS told people if you don't have resources, don't listen. We're not giving you instructions. Take what you have, do what you can.
Well, that's not really being part of a group. I mean, let's do this the opposite way. Let's say I'm in a group that wants to promote scientists. And I tell people, hey, everyone who wants to be a scientist, and that's it. Do it. That's all I do. And some guy succeeds. And he says, oh, that guy really helped me by saying stuff. Was I really, could I say he was really part of my whatever?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Couldn't. I don't think so. Too lazy.
Part of the reason why he did it,
So if it's too fickle too little for me to get credit, it's also too fickle and too little for someone to get the blame.
All right, Jason, I say yes. What do you say to that?
Well, okay.
I didn't hear your interjection. What was your interjection? I apologize.
Well, I think he makes a valid point. There is a difference between somebody who chooses to, or who is inspired by somebody, like somebody who says, go out and be a scientist, versus somebody who's actually then involved with you. There's obviously a difference there. But it's also true that the person who says, go out and be a scientist, that, you know, they are part of the reason why you do what you do. But also, maybe we should look at this a different way, which is that ISIS is not actually the big picture. The big picture is a religion that must not be named. Like, why? There's a commonality between this guy and ISIS. Like, why are people all, you know, why do we have all these different jihad groups that are not together, and some people act in isolation? Like, there is something that ties them all together, and it is decentralized to some degree. It's something to think about here, and what constitutes, you know, Al-Qaeda flies planes into the World Trade Center. ISIS does something else. But is there any connection between the two at all? Are they, in some sense, on the same mission, even if they've never spoken to each other?
What's that? Was that me with that? Was I supposed to answer or something? Was that someone trying to come on?
Somebody, I heard something.
Yeah.
Something says Brandon. So there's an ideology, obviously a belief system that brings all these people together, or that the people follow. So Liran says that groups can engage in war, but not individuals.
Yep. That's the definition.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Is that true though? I mean, why can't an individual engage in war?
Because that would be an assault. I mean, what's the difference between an assault and a war? I mean, wars are fought with armies, with groups, with whatever. When one guy does it, it's just a fight. I mean, or just a series of fights, or whatever. I mean, when it's done on a regular basis and involves planning and armies and whatever, then it's an actual war. But I mean, how can you have all those things with an individual? It'd be impossible.
Well, the purpose of an individual could be the same as the purpose of the group. I think we just don't see individuals because it's not practical. No individual is going to take on a government unless they're Superman. But
we don't have Superman.
Right.
Wait. Does anyone know what's the name of the Muslim superheroine? Don't you hear about this? Muslim superheroine.
Muslim superheroine? Is she in a burqa?
Let me see. I think she is, but not when she's in superhero form. With Kamala
like
Khan. Yeah.
In superhero mode?
Oh my fucking god, she is in the burqa. Oh, she's not in the burqa. And she's blonde.
Is this is a real person, or this is fake? This is Marvel.
It's fiction. It's all fake.
Everything's fake.
All fiction is fake.
What's her superpower?
She's Miss Marvel. She's Pakistani American, New Jersey, shape-shifting abilities. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, listen.
She can violate free speech in a 5-mile radius, or she can shut down the First Amendment in a 5-mile radius.
I don't know.
No.
I don't think Islam plays a big part in her story. Creator Sana Ahmad presenting President Barack Obama a copy of Miss Marvel Volume 1 at a reception at Women's History Month. Jesus fucking Christ.
Jason, you just gave me a good idea there. I'm slightly annoyed by this escapism everything from vampires to zombies to superheroes. This escapism really pisses me off, but maybe an objectivist could use it to the advantage of the wider cause or something by sort of writing these things where there's a superpower who has the ability to shut down the Fourth Amendment within a certain area and things like that.
It is an interesting thought, right?
There would be like the Bill of Rights, the anti-Bill of Rights bad gang, and then like due process would come in. He would be the good guy, and
That could actually be pretty interesting.
yeah, you gave me that idea. So when it goes blockbuster, give me $1 million because that's my idea.
Oh, well, partially mine too, I think there.
No, I mean my idea too.
Oh.
You gave me the idea. I gave it back to you. Now,
Right? Yeah, you developed it. That's true.
yeah. No, you're gonna develop it. I just came up with it while you inspired me. See how that works?
Good stuff.
But anyway, yeah, good idea. There. So what was the issue?
Like if you're around this villain, like all of a sudden nobody can reason anymore. You know, it's like
that would be that villain would have the power. That would be Emmanuel, Mr. Kant, the
Right.
superhero Emmanuel. We wouldn't name him Kant though, or maybe we don't only name him Kant, and everybody would say, "Why does he sound so much like Kant?" And
because he is.
yeah, that would be great. There could be superheroes.
But it could be like Lord of the Rings, you know, where you have Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White. We'd have Emmanuel. We'd have the phenomenal manual. Then we'd have the numeral.
That's fucking brilliant. It'd be too much to know. That 10 people would read it, and it'd be brilliant though. It'd be brilliant. It'd be a work of art for the future. There could be a Nietzschean superpower because he's the only philosopher who believes in like the Uberman, so he would have to have a Superman, and he wouldn't be Superman. He would be the Uberman.
He'd be driving cabs. He'd be the Uberman.
Yeah. Lee Ram loves this sort of stuff. Lee Ram, what's your idea on what we could do with it? I don't want to spend too long talking about fantasy because it's not true, but then we'll go on to Antarctica or something.
Well, that's what I think. I think we should have a story where people have tulpas or thought forms and they do cool shit, and there's astronauts and vampires and Soviet spies involved. That's what I want.
That's it?
No more than that.
Oh, and strippers. There's also a stripper, and a kid from jail, and an astronaut, and another astronaut, and the Russian gymnast spy, and the black guy with a big-ass afro, and the Chinese guy.
Now, wait, I think that was slightly racist. You're assuming that none of the other people were black, then.
I don't know, no, I just want the guy to be really black, really soul music, really soul music disco. I want this to be set in like the 70s. And there's a guy who's really into disco and he has a big afro, and yeah, I want that guy.
Well, if we do
Really into disco.
if we do a fiction story about these people that have modern superpowers, we got to deal with the Muslim reality of our day. You can't set it in the 70s. That's escapism.
What's wrong with the... No. It's in the 70s because the moon landing has triggered people obtaining these psychic manifestations of themselves, and now they have to fight because there's a guy who's a vampire who was an astronaut who discovered this rock which made him into a vampire, and he tried to take over the world, but then his astronaut one figured it out and he crashed a rocket on his face. But he survived, and he went to Soviet Russia, where he grew in power, and he tried to take over the world again in Cuba, but he was stopped in Cuba.
Okay.
He was stopped in Wait,
you want to give this away for free, man?
Yeah. Yeah, be careful. You're giving up valuable copyrights here.
I don't know. I thought of this idea a week ago, but it was a joke, but now I'm starting to actually like it. Don't actually like it. It's a lot like. Does anyone know what's JoJo's Bizarre Adventures? Anyone?
No.
Dildos? What?
Bizarre Adventures.
Is it true?
Yes.
All right, then I have a question for Jason.
Did we figure out if it was an act of war or not? But go ahead. We'll come back. I don't want to.
It may or may not have been an act of war, but we should destroy ISIS. That's the conclusion.
I think the key is, may or may not have been an act of war, but it was still, it was still inspired by a certain religion that must not be named.
Right, the unnameable religion.
And that's, I think that's the high order bit here is the high level of evasion is like, let's pretend it had nothing to do with that he was just, homophobic and crazy, and I think that's the big evasion.
Let me welcome Mr. Andrew the Red to the discussion. Can we hear you, Mr. Red?
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well. Have you been listening to what's been going on so far?
Yeah, the last maybe 20 minutes or so.
Okay, good. That's about how long we've been on, so you probably heard most of it. So, what do you think about anything we've said? You want to add to that? Should we breach a new conversation? Because we're sort of, I think we all know we should bomb the hell out of ISIS just in response for Orlando, if nothing else.
Well, the only thing I would say is I agree with whoever said that ISIS, like you can't. It's hard to fight a war against terrorism. Wars are usually fought against other nations. If there was evidence that certain nations were supporting these guerrilla fighters, and sure, then you can attack those nations. But otherwise, where is ISIS? They don't have a fort. They don't have a castle anywhere, so they're just in the shadows, right? So.
No, I think they have territory. Do they not have territory? Andrew, do you?
They have some territory. They used to.
Yeah, but isn't
now
it
they
always changing?
Yeah, it's always day to day. Who knows what's going on today?
Well, I mean, once we've taken away their territory, what, Andrew? Why do you say they don't exist anywhere? I mean, they own half of Syria and half of Iraq.
Yeah, but if you went in there, then they would just occupy the other half. You'd have to occupy all of it and hold on to it.
Like we did with Germany and Japan.
Yeah, that's what you'd have to do. You would just have to take it all over and then sort it out. And the problem is that they would probably escape to the satellite regions and stuff. So.
Then we would attack the satellite.
I don't know.
Then we would attack.
Yeah, I guess you just have to keep going around.
Yeah, the problem. Yeah, Jason, you point out that we've got Iran and Saudi Arabia. That's the. But I think that's being solved by fracking. So we'll see what happens in the next 5 years with that. But shit might happen fast. Europe's going downhill fast. Liram, what do you say is the solution? Go ahead.
The solution is really simple. Bomb Mecca. No more Mecca. No more of this BS. No more problems. That's it. No more. No Mecca. No Tehran too.
That would make everything worse.
What if it's bigger? Like we didn't just bomb Berlin. We bombed so many cities from North Africa to the north of Europe. So we got to do more than bomb Mecca. All right, I'll let Lee Ram finish. Then, gentlemen, you can respond.
Well, I mean, when was the other time we saw a religious group acting against a Western, ideologically, a Western secular power that brought progress and other things on a global scale with global terror cells on a worldwide scale? And you know what it was?
Go ahead.
The Jews. My great-great-great-great-grandparents in the Holy Land and the Roman Empire, the Jewish rebellion. There were two of them. Now, how did it end? It ended very simply, on all fronts, when the Romans sacked the Holy Temple and used it to build the Colosseum. No more Jewish terrorism. And you got to remember, these people are motivated by religion. You take away you bomb Mecca, and then, they say, well, if God is so great, why can't he protect Mecca? No answer, even in their stupid head. and it's gone. That's it. It's just like the Holy Temple and the Jews. I mean, it's been 2,000 years since the Jews have done any defensive whatever.
All right, so it would prove it would be a rational proof to irrational people of a point. I'm not sure if that would get anywhere, and I'm in favor of whether it works or not as well. Good point, Jason. Doesn't matter whether it works; it's worth a try and it's justice. All right, Jason or Andrew, any point you want to make on that? Because I think that we should bomb Iran.
I think. Does Andrew the Red have anything to say? I don't want to interrupt.
Not really, other than that I wouldn't do that, but go ahead.
Oh. Well, I think that Liron makes a good epistemological point, is that the reason this stuff has grown is because the religious jihadists have taken action after action after action and gotten away with it, and they've seen their movement grown, and they've seen that the West hasn't really decided to stop. I mean, the West could literally end all of this in one weekend. And because they don't, that proves to them that they must be in the right, that the jihadists must be in the right, that Allah must be on their side. The West is weak, doesn't have the moral backbone, and that's what encourages it, and it continues to grow. And the only way to change that belief is to, in effect, give them the sensory evidence that that's not true. And doing something like what Liron is suggesting shows them that. And it wouldn't change everybody's mind, but it would change a lot of people's mind, and it would reverse the trend so that fewer and fewer people would be able to become true believers, because there would be enough cognitive dissonance that it would at least stop the snowballing of the movement, and it might take a while to totally destroy it. But you know, if we would have done this 30 years ago when the Iranian Revolution happened, none of this would be happening right now.
Yeah,
we let it grow and grow and grow. Now we've gotten to the point where we're going to have total war, unfortunately, I'm afraid.
Yeah, let me mention, you say that just bombing them, just the tactile information would be important. That actually happened in World War II when they sent an aircraft carrier as close to Japan as they could get. Then they sent the bombers from the aircraft, and it was Doolittle. His name was Doolittle, and he bombed mainland Japan. And very, very early in the war, and it's actually in people's memoirs to this day that when they saw those American planes overhead dropping bombs on their cities and nothing happening, no fighter jets, nothing going up to stop them, Doolittle did a lot that day. It's a true thing. It's a fact. Doolittle did a lot. Thank you, Jason. That was a great line. And he proved not only, that was for Americans. Americans saw that and went, really? Their mainland is that poorly defended? And so it gave us hope, and it gave the Japanese a hint. And so destroying Mecca, I think, bravo. Andrew the Red, why do you say you wouldn't do that? Or is that what you took exception to?
Yeah, I wouldn't bomb Mecca. Like I said, my position is that you get good enough intelligence to figure out who's funding these groups, and then that's where you target. You don't just attack a religious city.
It's not a religious city, though. It's a political city. Mosques aren't religious.
Well, isn't it some kind of holy land?
Mosques aren't religious.
It's some kind of holy.
Well, they don't teach. Yeah, it's like the Vatican. They don't teach any difference between politics and religion. It's all one for them. So every mosque is a political fifth column in the real strict sense of that term. So Mecca is not a religious city the way the Vatican is today. And I have to say, anyone who wants to attack and destroy the Vatican has a few points in their favor, like mass pedophilia and child rape and the subjugation of foreign states and military marches, and you know, they have quite a few reasons to think that the Vatican and the Pope's power are suspect. But how many more reasons do we have to think that the Muslims are suspect? Holy shit, are you kidding me? Why shouldn't we destroy Mecca tomorrow?
What I'd like to know is why we haven't infiltrated those groups. You think that they don't have to be like James Bond style secret agent kind of thing, but I assume that they can somehow get, piggybacked information on some of that stuff. Why don't they?
I think they have it, and I think they're using it to help them because Obama's traitor-in-chief. I mean, I think that they're sending money to ISIS. You heard about the 2,000 vehicles that they abandoned and let ISIS capture, as if we didn't have enough bombs to destroy those vehicles and not let them fall into ISIS's hands. But no, that was just the best way Obama could give them a massive aid package. So it may be that bad, I think. I'm afraid. It looks that bad. I don't know if it is that bad, but why does it look that bad? Why does it keep looking like Obama is helping them every fucking step of the way?
Well, I think he is, but it's probably just pragmatism, right? I mean, the same way that Reagan funded the Mujahideen against the Russians, maybe. Yeah. Unless you think that he's really... I mean, I don't know how anyone could still be making that mistake. You'd have to be an idiot, but, I mean, Reagan did it, but he was the first one. Maybe he can be forgiven, but...
Well, Reagan believed in God, so he thought at least we're dealing with religious people, not the atheistic communists.
Right.
So in his rationalistic universe, that wasn't even something to think about. That was totally outside the realm of thought. Do I support atheists or someone who at least has a religion they believe strongly in? For Reagan, obviously atheists are bad. You know, it was so far outside the realm of his tiny cognition on this subject. You know, he was great with politics and ethics, morality. He knew you got to get up in the morning and feed your kids, but whether or not there's a God, not so much, not his realm. So I give him 2 points on that. You know, you can't expect the world of everybody. But Andrew, you are on an outpost here. We do wonder about that beard and mustache thing in your picture now.
What do you mean an outpost?
You're in an outpost because you're in a group of people that say destroy Mecca, and of course the objectivists have said that for ages and ages. And
I've never heard ARI say bomb Mecca.
I don't think they've officially said that.
Yeah, Peacock, you're on Brooke. If Peacock and you're on Brooke speak for it, then they have.
Well, they usually say stuff about Iran, but I've never heard them say anything about Mecca.
Well, that's why I just included Tehran in the. But yeah, but Mecca. What did Pamela Geller? Not Pamela Geller. What's her name? Said nuke Mecca and convert the survivors to Christianity, and she has the first part right. But why would that be a bad idea? What's valuable about Mecca now? What do you see in it? I think it's a political fifth column. They preach child rape and women enslavement.
I just don't think it would be an effective target, and I think it would. I don't think it would do what you want to do. I think you should target the funding and certain countries that may be funding it, not a holy site.
Well, I think that Saudi Arabia is funding it. Isn't that the case?
You think Trump's going to go into Saudi Arabia?
The money that goes to Saudi Arabia through oil comes back to us through terrorism.
Well, I think the Saudis have been fairly cozy with the Americans, so I don't see that happening.
You don't think the Saudis?
You remember with Bush, all those handshakings and hugging, probably, I don't know. Certainly the handshaking
with the
when
Saudis?
They came and visited. Yes.
Yeah. You know how it is now, though. Congress is in control of a lot of that shit. Doesn't matter what Obama does. When we became independent as far as oil imports, Congress, within a number of weeks of that news coming out, Congress had said we're going to publish all the 9/11 papers. And then Saudi Arabia launched a lawsuit to stop it because 19 of the hijackers were from Saudi Arabia. So, yeah, we're very careful about them, except now we don't have to be. Like I was saying earlier, fracking may solve a lot of these problems because $500 billion a year we were buying in fuel around 2009 from the Middle East, and that's all evaporated. We're now exporting oil. So
Yeah, yeah. There's no doubt if there's a shift in oil purchases and all that, then that will definitely be an effect in the Middle East. But you see, the thing is, as much as America might become more and more energy independent, I think the East will just be consuming more of it. So I don't think the Middle East will ever lose really buyers for their product. I think they'll always have buyers.
true. All right, Jason, were you ready to say something?
Yeah, I think Loran's getting ready to explode there. Maybe you should.
Yeah, let's let him say what he's got. What are you typing out there, Liran?
Look, the part about let's, what Andrew said, let's use intelligence and figure out who's funding them and who's the targets and take them out. Bullshit. Israel tried it at least 1,000 times. You know how many times it worked? Zero. Nada. Zero.
Tried it against who?
Oh, Jesus. Why would the 1,001 time is it gonna work? I mean, Israel tries this all the time, and you know something? These people, if they don't have the money now, they're gonna get it later. And if they're not gonna get it later, they're gonna get it eventually, because they're not stupid. They can make money to some extent. Or they can steal it, or they can whatever. No, they're not that dumb. They have resources, and they can still make a buck out of them.
All right. If
You
that's
know, it's not... Can I finish?
if that's the case, then we should find a fast way to surrender, shouldn't we?
Us? Us or them?
Shouldn't we just surrender? Because they're going to get the money anyway. We can't stop it. Go ahead.
Kill them
What's
at the
Loran's
base.
solution?
Yeah, what's the...
What base?
Where's the base? Is the base Mecca?
Mecca. Mecca is the base. Where does this BS come from? You know what drives these
Not
people?
there.
What is the driving force in war? What is the main resource?
This isn't war. This isn't a nation against a nation.
It's nations against nations, okay?
It isn't. ISIS isn't taking territory in the United States or Europe.
Yeah,
Well,
but
just
it sure as shit wants to, and it's planning to.
Yeah, they want to. They're trying and they're planning.
And
Jason,
it's not just about taking territory, it's about undermining another nation. Now, it could be a little, but
Jason says
remember...
he knows the answer. Jason, go ahead. What's your answer to it?
Were you done there, Loran? I don't want to.
I've muted him. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So I heard. So Andrew, you said it's not war. So my response to that is, then I guess there are some things that are worse than war or just as bad as war that we have to take as seriously as war. We'll call it what we want, but it's still a movement, a military, a violent movement aimed at bringing down our government, or to replace our laws with their laws. Through, hold on one second. The answer is very simple. You guys got to excuse me for 1 second because I have to answer the door to get the pizza that I ordered.
No, go ahead. Andrew.
I'll come back and finish.
Yeah, Andrew, elaborate or state more on. Go ahead, make your case, because I have to say, Andrew, I think that, I don't know, are you not watching enough Fox News or something? You don't know how bad it is or something over there. ISIS has a massive chunk of territory to themselves.
In the Middle East. Well, remember, the Middle East is destabilized in those areas, and no wonder they're there. ISIS existed decades ago too. It just wasn't called that, and the only reason they're there is because, yeah.
Lee Ram has pointed some fact out that is actually very significant. You are from Canada,
Yes,
aren't
that is right.
you? You do
Yep.
not have information available. I'm afraid you are.
Well, you keep calling it a war.
I'm afraid you're out of the loop of what's going on over there and how bad it is. Do you know what's going on in Europe? Do you know how bad that is? Tell me about Europe right now. What you know.
Well, certainly there's the migrant stuff, and there is a lot of people pouring into Europe. There's no doubt.
Yeah, tell me about crime. Do you know about crime right now? What's happening? Riots and stuff? Do you know anything about that?
But, so let me go back to the original topic. So there's no doubt it's an issue. I just don't think it's a war. I don't think we need to call it a war. A war is nation on nation, where you've got Japan and Germany fighting, whatever, Britain, etc. This isn't nation on nation. When the United States goes to the Middle East, you've got more of a situation of war, because you do have vehicles against vehicles and troops against troops. But if you got some random crazy person blowing something up in the name of ISIS, that's not a war. You can't deploy the troops and stop them. They're everywhere, right? So I don't think it's a war. It doesn't make it less important. It just means the tactics change. That's all. You can't line up the National Guard and defend against some random person in the shadows. We don't know when he's going to attack, kind of thing, right? But you can deploy National Guard when, like, the Bundy stuff and things like that, right? When you've got police force against a militia. So that's group on group, but you can't do that against one man that can attack at any time, kind of thing. So just to reiterate, it is important. It's an important conflict, but it's not a war, and the tactics therefore must be different.
The tactics have to be different from war. I mean, so I would say, okay, let's just assume you're right. Then we can't attack ISIS because it doesn't have a nation. So we have to attack the nation that pays for ISIS and inspires and preaches about ISIS, and that would be Saudi Arabia and Iran. So if you're correct, then we should immediately attack Saudi Arabia and Iran. If you're wrong, then we should attack Saudi Arabia, Iran, and ISIS all at once, which ISIS owns half of Syria and half of Iraq. Apparently, they aren't telling you that in Canada. Do you know about the mass rapes in Canada? Do you know about the rape of Europe? 10,000 rapes this year? This will become known as the rape of Europe. In 50 years, they will call it the rape of Europe.
Right, okay, but hold on, though. So do you think the rapes in Europe are not from ISIS?
ISIS is a small corner of Islam.
Yes.
We're fighting Islam.
Right.
Nuke Mecca.
And if you can track down who's making the IEDs, who's selling the AK-47s like they used in Paris,
You can't.
and then you can be more effective against.
No, you can't. No, you can't. We didn't try to track down every Nazi. We just blew up Berlin. We leveled the fucking place.
Yeah, but that was a nation. That was a nation, though.
All right.
And that was a government.
The Nuke Mecca.
A leader.
Nuke Mecca. What's wrong with nuking Mecca?
I don't think ISIS is sitting in Mecca.
Well, they sure believe in Mecca. They pray to it every day. That's the way they pray. They face Mecca when they pray. What if they were facing a nuclear bomb crater? Wouldn't that be fucking hilarious?
Why don't we change the topic? I have two topics.
Okay.
I have two topics.
But I want to say one thing, though.
Okay.
All right, Jason, go ahead, and then we'll breach a new topic here.
Yeah, I have to disagree with the. This is what George Bush thought. He says it's a different kind of war. It's a different kind of war. That was his attitude. And you're right. It is different in the sense that it's decentralized. But the objective is the same: to bring down a government and replace it with your laws. And it's based on a religion. And I think the idea of tracking down individuals is the wrong approach, because it's not driven by individuals. It's driven by, I mean, you could say everything is driven by individuals, but it's because, why does ISIS do what they do? Why are all these decentralized groups taking the action that they're taking? They're taking it because they observe in the world, empirically, that other Muslims do the same thing, and they get away with it. And it advances, and the movement advances, because they see this as a global movement, and it's a war because when they die, they're not just They're not out of it now. They're in heaven, and they're going to watch the rest of it unfold. And the only way to change that, so that decentralized groups stop joining the movement, is to change the observations so that they no longer see that happening. What they see is that anytime people engage in jihad, that they're completely destroyed. And any government that supports it is totally destroyed. Any government that sticks its middle finger to Western civilization is totally destroyed. So literally they become to believe that, imagine that I'm a jihadist, I'm punching somebody in the face, okay? But they literally come to believe that this punch right here is the destruction of their own mosque or some other Islamic target in the Middle East that they may not even know have anything to do with. But it's because it's just, I'm destroying Islam and Muslims by doing this.
I agree.
Stops.
I agree with all of that, but the problem is, who are you going to hit? Who are you going to attack? So let's say we have intelligence about the Omar guy, that he's coming to Orlando, right? And we're not going to be able to predict it, so it ends up happening. Who do you punch back now? Where's the response? And don't say Mecca.
Well, can I just say that earlier we were talking about this. If we would have had some attack by some Japanese person during World War II, the State Department, if you went to the State Department and said, what are you going to do about this? The State Department would say, the Army and Navy are already doing every frickin' thing they can every frickin' minute. And that's what it should be against ISIS. It shouldn't be, what are we going to do about this latest ISIS attack? We're on the road to destroying ISIS. It'll be a matter of weeks before we're in the middle of ISIS territory holding an American flag. But that's just not the case. So it's all just a terrible mess. So it really shouldn't be a question, what do we do about the Orlando attack? That should just be one little teeny thing the enemy gets done while we're destroying the enemy. And that is just not how it's unfolding. So what we're going to do is wait for more and more blood, and the war is going to be bigger and bigger the longer we wait. And we're seeing right now, what if I told you that there would be 5,000 rapes this year in Canada? And the rape rate went up from whatever, it's going to be like 1,000 or something reported rapes in Canada.
Unacceptable. Nuke them all.
Yeah, nuke every Canadian, right?
No, not Canadians.
Right. Well,
Come on.
do something about the rape rate, and the rape rate in Europe is phenomenal. Hey, you guys know about the soccer riots? Everybody's talked for the last 20 years about, in Europe, every time there's a soccer game, they riot and destroy the town, right? Football, whatever, football, fuck it. You guys know about the violence of these soccer fans or hooligans or chavs? These guys used to fight.
In South America?
No, in Europe. So like England,
Okay.
Germany.
Is there been more riots than normal or something?
No, what's happened is very strange. Now they get together, drink, they sing, they take over the streets, and they sing and dance, and because there's this camaraderie, because they keep having these street brawls with Muslims, and so the young soccer hooligan sports fan guys now see that they are on a team and the Muslims are on a team, and there's these street brawls every day. There's like 100 street brawls across Europe, and people get stabbed and hit with baseball bats and dragged around and curb checked and stuff. And none of it makes it on the news, of course. How would they possibly report it? But you can go online and talk to people about it in chat rooms and stuff. It's happening. It's real. And the crime rate at the end of this year that we live in, the crime rate in Europe is going to be well over 100 times what it was last year. So
here's a little story for you that you'll probably like. Not too long ago, like Canada, you may know that Canada brought in, I'm not sure, maybe 30,000 Syrian refugees, I think. And there was, in one of the cities, there was a complaint made. A group of Syrians, they gave themselves a name, but they didn't all sign it, but I don't know how many there was, maybe 100 or something. They all got together and signed a complaint form against the Canadian government, about they didn't like the conditions that they were in. They were, for some of them, were living in hotels for a bit before they were moved to, I don't know what really happens to them. And then also some of them were complaining about the food, because the food that they were given was Canadian Middle Eastern, like it was like just like you have Chinese restaurants and different places, right? They're not quite authentic. They're kind of a half and half sort of thing. So they were complaining that the Middle Eastern food they were getting was Canadian / Middle Eastern and not authentic. So you're getting kind of thanklessness, right, from
That's
the
how entitled
refugees
they are.
here.
Well, they think we are weak pieces of garbage, and they can come here and have our women and have our houses, and they don't think we're going to do anything about it. You know, the Nazis thought the same thing. They thought that the British and American soldiers were pathetic, weak, privileged, couldn't fight, demoralized, didn't believe in their system. So that's the
Well,
point they're
it
making.
seems like right now, though, and I have been seeing some of the news stuff down there in the States. It seems like right now, though, that this Orlando thing is being used solely to try to change the Second Amendment down there. The
Yeah.
whole thing's been skewed. I think you guys are screwed, by the way.
No.
I think that's going to change there.
No. I'll tell you what, there's more guns in this country than I don't know what
Better hope Trump
they're going
gets
to
in.
do. People have so many guns, it's outrageous, and we doubled the number of guns we owned under Obama, and it was already out-fucking-rageous. We have so many guns, it's amazing. We have private ammunition manufacturing plants in people's basements throughout this country. It's true.
Well, this is a very significant election then, because there's no doubt if Clinton were to get in, it would be she would start changing shit.
It'd be a shooting fight. I mean, it would get real.
You'd be in big trouble.
There are people who won't give up their guns. They'll die first. And a lot of them believe in God. So you're up against a hard target when you have someone who thinks they have the master of the universe at their back. So guns are secure in America. What I'm worried about over the next 10 years is Europe. America's fine. America was fine in the 30s and 40s during the biggest catastrophe on the planet. And we're going to be fine this time. We're going to have, there's going to be a club that gets shot up, and there's going to be a skyscraper that comes down. But we're not going to have whole cities and whole regions leveled and occupied like the rest of the world. Europe, particularly, is in for a very, very, very bad time. BMW is now manufacturing in Mexico because they know that Germany is not a stable place to try to manufacture.
Wow.
So
Okay.
the two topics I had.
Yeah, let's do the topic.
Yeah, so you guys can just pick whatever you want. So the two topics were, the first one is, instead of fighting the Nazis in World War II, what if we allied with Hitler and fought the communists? Because ultimately we had to do that anyways. Communism was a bad thing from the USSR, and ultimately that had to be done later. So what if we had left the Nazis till later and fought the communists first? So that's the first topic. The second topic is China in Korea. I guess like when I was on here last time, we talked a little bit about the Korean War and how China intervened. And when I watched that documentary, I was floored that they did that. And I'm wondering whether that could ever happen again, because China in its history has been beaten up mostly by Japan and everybody else, Genghis Khan, and just a lot of invasions, and I guess it's a hard area to defend maybe. So I'm wondering whether China has some resentment, some historical resentment, and will want to start a show of force someday. So those are the two topics.
All right. Well, I have plentiful to say about the one, the European thing. Hitler declared war against us, so I'm not sure it was within our power to do or say anything about that. I'll throw it open to either Jason or Lee Ram. Either of you want to say on anything of those, and I have plentiful thoughts on both. So go ahead, Lee Ram. Go ahead.
Well, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
I can
Yes.
hear you.
Okay, just a second.
No, you're.
You got a sexy pose going on there.
Thanks. Gotta keep the the manly figure. Anyways, allying with Hitler, dumb idea. I mean, they're in war with Britain. Britain has traditionally been America's best friend. A very dangerous friend to have, but still, and they're against Russia. And just the fact that Russia is an enemy doesn't mean you have to address it yet. It means you can just hold on to it. You can hold on to it, defend Britain mildly, wait till the Russians exhaust the Germans, then go in. And in the meantime, take over Japan. So I don't think the idea of having allying with the Germans would have been any good, because remember, the whole reason the US got in was because of Japan. And who's Japan's friend? Germany. I mean, they're probably not going to break that alliance just to become friends with the USA. It doesn't work that way. And about the Chinese involvement in Korea, I happened to hear about it today by a guy named Thomas Ricks, famous military journalist historian. And he said that in Korea in the past, the Chinese involvement, and the Chinese basically did the communist move. They threw soldiers at the front, to die and hold the enemy back, which worked because the freeze really got them, because it was in the winter and the Korean peninsula can get very cold. So that was the Chinese involvement. But this shouldn't be a surprise. The Chinese have always been hostile to the United States and the West in general. They have a national inferiority complex. In fact, they think their inferiority complex is better than everyone's inferiority complex. But no, I mean, I lived in China when there was the Olympics, and in their heads, the whole point of the Olympics is to show the Americans how superior and the West how superior they are, which is why they, like crazy, invested everything they had in it, both monetarily, superior inferiority. They invested like crazy in athletes because they wanted to be the country with the most medals, and they wanted to make sure this is the Chinese nations embark in world leadership because blah blah blah. But that's how their head thinks. You got to remember how much important is hierarchy in their society.
All right. So
that's all I'm gonna say.
All right. Now I can say a couple words about both situations. Jason, I'll let you go next, but I do want to mention you have a way with words, Jason. And first of all, you should, I don't know if you do write poetry, but you should try. You should give a limerick a swing or something.
Really? Well, I do have one poem about Bigfoot. Maybe I'll share it with you later.
Okay, sounds good. But what would you want to say about what's just transpired? What do you think about Russia and Germany and Japan and China and that?
Yeah, I think I agree with most of what Loran was saying. I mean, no, I think we made the right decision. If we would have allied with Germany, we would have had to fight Britain and France, which is truly bizarre. I don't know how logistically that doesn't make any sense. Then we would have like a three-front war, then, wouldn't we? Because your purpose is to ally with Germany and go against the Soviet Union, which I think would never succeed anyway. But then you're also still then fighting Germany and France also then, which is bizarre. So that would be suicide. And plus, they were the best countries in Europe were the ones we defended. So if we changed that and destroyed them instead, I think that the world would be much worse today. I doubt we would have destroyed the Soviet Union. Communism would have still been there. And guess what? It's still here anyway, and now we have everyone feeling the burn. So,
let me clarify a little bit. I wasn't suggesting at all to fight Britain and France. What I was suggesting is that it seems that because we allowed communism to survive World War II, they spread and became a later problem with the Cold War, with the Korean War, the Vietnam War, right? So what if we had put an end to communism there at World War II? Nazism couldn't have spread very far. It would have just been in Europe and fought Nazism later, because otherwise we have what I just listed, the Cold War with Cuba and Russia, and then Vietnam, Korea, and it's still with us today. So would it have been any better if we flipped the story there?
Well,
But I don't see how we could have done that. I mean, if we were allied with Germany, we would have had to fight Britain and France. That's just the consequence, right?
I think there is sort of like a third option. Ayn Rand said that we should have just let Germany and Russia fight it out and exhaust each other, and they indeed were doing that. And so when we look back on it, we say, well, Germany went east, and then Russia came west like a tidal wave. But do you know how much of Russia was powered by us? Because we weren't giving them steel plants and locomotives after 1945. That all stopped. All of their steel plants and locomotives and technology that they got from us way before the 50s and 60s and 70s. However, when their country fell apart in the late 80s and 1991, it all just poof in some smoke. They were still using the same steel plants that we had shipped them in World War II. Those were still in operation. And a lot of the same locomotives and stuff that we had sent them in World War II, those had been copied, they had been rebuilt. Those people literally can't produce anything. So, assuming we wouldn't have shipped them hundreds of steel foundries, steel plants, rolling mills, machinery to mine coal, machinery to ship the coal, trucks, thousands and thousands and thousands of trucks, engine plants, technology to make engines. Assuming we hadn't done all of that in 1942, 3, and 4, and 5, then I think that they would have been much, much poorer and much, much more difficult. Sputnik was, well, okay, we can get it, all right, that's good, but that goes into German rocket technology. That's a slightly different side of the thing. But my point is that so much of Soviet Union productivity, what we think of as their productive ability, so much of it was shipped to them by America over a several-year period that if we wouldn't have done that, they would have been much weaker. We wouldn't have had to fight them. But I'm not sure that we could avoid that because we actually spent the 1930s building their hydroelectric plants and stuff, and we spent the 1930s rebuilding Germany. It seems that wealth flows from the rich countries to the totalitarian countries, and then they turn around and use it for violent means. And that doesn't seem to be something that we've been able to short-circuit or change. But so I've said what I can about that. So if either Jason, Omnam, or Andrew, if you want to, Andrew, that was your point. So if you want to respond to what I said about Russia, what do you think about that? What if we just let Germany and Russia fight each other, and we were at war with Germany, so we go ahead and attack them, and then Russia's much, much weaker, and we don't end up having like the real Cold War, and then Russia doesn't get to seize German technology because they don't make it all the way to Berlin. We take over Berlin. And so Russia doesn't end up taking all those scientists and the rocket engines and all that stuff. And so we let them take all that technology, take it back, and use our steel plants to build the stuff. What if we short-circuit all that and just attack Germany from the west and not ally with Russia? Would that sort of satisfy what you would prefer to have seen in World War II?
I think what a good solution could have been was to, like, when the World War II broke out, Germany had run over France in, what, a month or something? It was really fast. And Germany was essentially fighting a one-front war only. They were only going east. Britain was getting the crap bombed out of it and really couldn't do much. So I think what would have been better, and this might be some prejudice on my part, but I think if the Americans and Canadians just held Britain's soil and not allowed the Germans to cross over, and then there you go, let Germany and Russia beat the crap out of each other, maybe that would have been a better outcome, because like I'm saying, like, my whole point is that it seems like because we've essentially left Russia alone, it infected all the East, and I'm wondering whether if World War II was a little different, whether we wouldn't be having to worry about Korea, Vietnam, and all that, because that nonsense is still with us, right? So I'm just wondering if there was a better could have done something better in World War II to not allow communism to carry on so long. And sure, it ended in Russia, but is Russia a great nation today? And then look at all the communism that's still in the East, right? So.
Yeah, so we could have short-circuited. I think that just the fact that they were able to produce something like all the stuff that we shipped them in World War II was really, really, really important and really, really, really useful. So, yeah, I think that they got a lot of their productive capacity. They wouldn't have been able to fight the Korean War. They wouldn't have been able to provide tanks or planes or guns for it if they were completely destroyed and prostrate from the problems with Germany in World War II. Yeah. So, and what should we do about, what should we have done about the war? I can't remember what was the question in Asia, and would it have been solved by the thing with Russia? Probably. But given we did what we did with Russia, what was your question about Asia? Should we have done about Korea, or what was the question?
You mean the second topic?
Yeah, the second topic. What was that? I've forgotten.
Well, the second topic was just about, well, we kind of talked about that, about whether China would have its get back everybody. Would China rise and want to do a bit of their own imperialism because they've been kind of bullied for most of their existence? So, and then yet they had a huge amount of troops that went into Korea that one war, right? So I'm just wondering if that all is going to happen again. It just doesn't seem like that's the end of the story there.
Yeah, let me let Liran on. Liran, go ahead, because you lived in China. Go ahead. What do you think they're going to be up to? I think it's very possible we could see a big thing from China.
China, well, what we're going to see in China is a lot of things. Remember, it's a big country. I think saying that it's China, and it's really, not a very, it's in a sense very centralized, but in another sense it's not very centralized, because let's say there's a governor of a province. That governor has more say in the province than the communist king, or the emperor, whatever. Well, he is the emperor. Than the Communist Party in Beijing. So in that sense, we're going to see a lot of internal war. It's going to be very hard to see them united, which means there might be either a civil war for that, or they might be either a last-ditch effort to unite them in some kind of, imperialistic adventure.
So it's more tribal than we realize.
I wouldn't say. Yeah, I would say tribal. It's more, internal strife than anything else. But we might see them united by something, if there's some promise of glory and loot.
So we think of it as a top-down federalist-style system, and it's not.
It's a very lawless society, and it's very much local influence. It's not what you had with Mao, where Mao was basically the emperor and he could squash anyone in the country. It's much more local rulers. And what's the word you wanted to say? Conquering anything, that's very, very unlikely. Because the Chinese have one of the most incompetent militaries in the world today. The only thing they can do is they can throw troops at something, because they can, I'm going to say a funny story. They had a joint exercise with the Japanese Navy, which is weird because they hate each other, but they had a joint exercise. And the Japanese asked them to stop. You know why? Because they couldn't get the Chinese ships not to bump into the Japanese ships.
I remember hearing about that.
Well, that's how bad they are, and you got to remember, the military is a type of corrupt way of social mobility. So you can literally buy a position in the military and get money from, and get pension from that, and well, yeah, that's how it is.
So, Liram, is China more similar to Germany or to Russia? Because, like, Germany was competent in some way, Russia just sort of fumbling and incompetent. You think it's more similar to Russia and sort of like we'll never really get anywhere, but we'll always talk a big game?
The only thing the Chinese can do is they can throw their numbers around as an advantage, which is significant, because if they're against, I don't know, Nepal or Bangladesh, wouldn't say India because India is too big, but if they're against any of their neighbor countries, they can just throw troops around, and eventually that's, it's going to deplete the manpower, and they're going to get in. But China's real danger is through soft power, because they're very shifty, very clever. And that's how they do things. I mean, their best strategy is to economically weaken a certain area, and after that, then they can really start not conquering it, but they can really put influence, getting people in, corruption. The stuff Yuri Bezmenov talked about with Russia. Remember that?
What about the Spratly Islands? Does anybody?
Well,
I think the Spratly Islands in South China Sea are going to be like the flashpoint beginning of some big trouble. Anybody else think that's the case, or can you talk me out of it, talk me down, and let me relax a little bit?
Sengoku. I know what you're talking about. The Sengoku
Islands.
Andrew or Jason, do either of you know about the Spratlys and what's going on over there?
No, I've never heard of it, and if I've never heard of it, it must be not important enough to start a conflict.
Well, do you know that they're building landing strips for military aircraft in international waters? Andrew?
Who is? China?
China, yeah.
China.
Andrew, is that not something you know about?
That's not something to worry about because they'll just be made of plastic with lead paint, so it's fine.
Well, what they're doing is they're taking these bits where rocks stick up above the water during low tide and pumping sand up on them. And they've made some runways and islands and stuff with buildings on them, which is fine, but the runways are long enough to land the largest military aircraft on our planet. So they're large, expensive, highly technological runways.
It's made in China, though.
No, it's not. It's made in the middle of the ocean.
The island is made in China?
Well, it's made of China.
Good point. Good point. But no, seriously.
Let me ask a serious question, though.
Though, is that something that's not known? No, seriously, is that something that's not known about up there in Canada? Are you not talking about it? Is it not known of? I think that it's potentially going to touch off a war. Is the press in Canada not talking about the Spratly Islands and the landing zones and stuff that they're building at all? Andrew? You're a Canadian. You're a resident Canadian. Have we lost Andrew? I can't hear if Andrew is talking.
The government got involved just now and silenced.
He probably is. The Canadian government's got involved. And Argentinian Jews over here. Do you have something to say about that? You know about the Spratly Islands, right?
No, but I know of something very simple. I know about the Sengoku or the Triangle Island in China. In Japanese it's Sengoku, and in China I forgot what it's called. And it's a little island that China is getting on disputes with Japan all the time about. Well, as we know, these little small towns always ignite big wars. You know, like what was the Peloponnesian War started over?
Yeah, some patch of scrubland.
Something to do with a sacred war or whatever. I don't even remember.
It's always the scrubby area between nations that people fight over.
Yeah, it's stupid. But that's how it started, and it's very likely that China will use it as an excuse to start a war because they're an aggravated society. That's the thing.
They have an excess of males. They have like 10 million extra males that can't get laid. A man with no
10 million in a country of a billion. That's 1 out of 100. That's not that much.
10 million extra males.
But they can always get foreign women in the country or leave the country or whatever.
Extra foreign women?
They can get inside extra foreign women. Some of them are rich enough, or they can leave.
All right, Andrew's back. Andrew, if you can hear us and want to finish your point, go ahead and finish what you had been saying.
Am I back?
You are back. I can hear you. Perfect.
Yeah. So I was going to ask if you can see this like what they're building from Google Earth online here.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. They're long runways. They're very long runways. They're long enough for the biggest aircraft on Earth. So that's very interesting. Jason, I'll just point a sentence at you. isn't this interesting that our foreign comrades in Canada and Argentina are unaware of basic facts? Doesn't that bode poorly?
Well,
Where did you hear it?
most people I know don't even know what socialism is, so.
Oh, good point. But I mean, I 3 days don't go by that I don't click on a link about something about what's going on in the Spratlys and how we've sent a ship near them, and they said not to provoke us, so we sent 2 more ships in a helicopter flight, and they said, you're really bothering us, so we sent a bomber over, and we're like really, really pushing their buttons.
Mm.
I'm surprised we're doing it. I think Obama's doing the minimum he can without the commander of some or other wing calling him a traitor publicly or something. It's getting that bad. They actually disagree with Obama in public now. The commander of the Pentagon and stuff. Obama said ISIS is on the run and whatever, and it's shrinking. And the commander of the Pentagon came out Wednesday and said, we don't see this on the horizon even. What the president said. He said, not only is it not true now, it's not even coming. So our military high command is disagreeing with the commander-in-chief in public. That's absolutely unprecedented in our history.
Here's a question: how many years do you think it will take before Obama is actually given an objective analysis of his presidency?
I've given him an objective analysis already.
Yeah, done.
Well, it seems like well, I mean in the mainstream media, it just seems like he's being given a pass and given a fairly light because of the
when your grandkids are wearing diapers in old age, there'll probably be a book comes out that says Obama wasn't a good president. But before that, everybody's going to be online because he's the Messiah. He's black. You know, he has this extra melanin in his skin, so he can't do anything wrong. So
he's handsome.
Apparently, I've heard that. I thought he had big ears, but whatever.
I thought people like big ears.
Who's people? I'm not a people.
I like big ears. What's wrong with big ears?
Mine are normal, so I don't have to like big.
Those are big. Those are big.
And
mine are big. My head's big too. So.
Mine are big too.
He taught the Constitution. He taught the Constitution in colleges or universities.
So he did.
He taught it?
Yes.
I don't understand that to be the case. I think that he misrepresented it and was a community outreach organizer, is what I understand.
Yeah. Well, yes. Right.
Okay.
Guys, I want you to see a video. I want you to see this hilarious video. Seriously, one of the funniest videos I saw.
We don't want to see any anime.
What's your problem with anime?
Or pro wrestling.
What's your problem with anime?
Hey, somebody give me Brandon, give me your best Macho Man Randy Savage impression.
I don't know who Randy Savage is. Who's
Slim Jim. He's the Slim Jim guy, don't you remember?
Slim Jim. Is that a commercial or something? I don't watch it, so I don't know about it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're gonna go over there and get ISIS. Oh yeah.
That wasn't
It's not bad.
Okay, guys, you gotta look at this.
Can you do share screen? Do you know how to do share screen?
No, just look at it in your window. It's hilarious.
Oh, I see.
Okay, I put it in the chat. I gotta go to the bathroom. Be right back. Look at this, because this stuff will make you roll on the floor laughing. See you in a bit.
Mr. Popper, what's that? What were those islands again you were talking about? Can you bring that up on the screen and actually show these things?
Yeah, just a second. I will do that. I'll do share screen. And so it's the Spratlys, and it's just the South China Sea.
Is that, we're talking like southeast of Korea or something, or really far south of Japan, or?
Yeah, it's funny. It's like imagine America, or imagine Canada claimed all of the ocean all the way down to Florida and over to Britain and up to Canada, and they said, "Oh, that's the Canadian Sea."
It sounds like what's going on is China's making a Hawaii, like an extended island that they can deploy military from.
Yes, essentially that's the case.
So it must be like east of New Guinea or something like that. Like in that area, maybe. You know, by the way, Lee Rand's going to be pissed off when he comes back and no one watched his friggin' video.
Right? Which we immediately just said, okay, this other stuff.
Let's see. Oh, you shared it. You got this. So when he comes back, you can play it on your shared screen.
Sad. Okay, seriously, watch the video, because it's hilarious. So good. Are you watching it?
Okay, here is the you can see over here at the far right is Japan and stuff.
Don't.
And over here at the
Anime.
left. And so this area in here is the problem. There's rocky areas and stuff out here. You can see it's not near the border. It's not near China. It's closer to other countries than to China. So there's one image of it. Now, I don't know. Maybe you can't. Maybe you're not even allowed to find this stuff. But could you possibly Google it and find it on your own, Andrew? It might just be censored. You might not be able to get it.
It seems like it's tucked in there. It's not like way out in the middle of the ocean like Hawaii is, right?
It's compared to. I mean, for China, it's in the middle of the ocean. I mean, they don't have a navy to speak of. So what China has been building in the South China Sea, New York Times, even New York Times is on it.
How many carrier battle groups does the States have again? 14.
Do you know
And
how many
what's
the rest
the
of
next-
the world has?
What's the next one up, and what's the next country up?
We don't even have to do that. I'll just give you this. What's all the rest of the world's battle carrier groups put together total?
I don't know, 10?
0, son. 0.
100.
We have 14.
No one has a
Nobody else
battle
can field one. No one else can field a carrier group.
There's got to be. Some people have. Well, what's a battle
Wow.
group? People have aircraft carriers.
All right, you can see my screen right now?
Nations have.
Can you see my screen? China has
Yeah.
placed
Yep.
runways and radar facilities on new islets in the South China Sea built by piling huge amounts of sand onto reefs. The construction is straining already taut geopolitical tensions. New York Times. And the New York Times is a leftist rag.
Yep.
So
That's
I don't
right.
know. I don't know if you're being left out of the loop up there in Canada, but there's a war coming with China, and it's going to be a territorial war, and it's going to start in the Spratly Islands. All right. So there was something else being said while I was saying that.
Bad
Well,
si-
what would be a. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just say it's a bad situation, and I don't think we're going to get roped into that.
Why are
Oh,
we trading with these people?
What?
we've neutered a whole bunch of societies in Asia, and they can't fight for themselves, and they expect us to protect them. And China's
Right.
test our mettle. They're going to test us and see if we can do it.
That's exactly
Well,
right.
I guess that's a good question. I think a couple of hangouts ago we were actually talking about that exact question of what is America's interest and whether. I remember now that we were talking about because Trump was saying that he was going to start making nations pay for their defense, right? So then the question for us was, what is Americans' interest, and does it have to be defending the East all this time? Can they just leave and protect their own nation?
Nah.
Like,
Leland, what should we do? Should we take over China like we did Germany and Japan?
take over.
No, I think just
That'd be pretty tough.
just putting them out of commission should be enough.
I don't think the states would ever be able to take over China, but you don't want to do nukes back and forth. That would just be insane. You'd have a
Why
fallout
not? Just
free.
nuke.
But there's so many.
a
Like,
nuke.
what's the manpower of Chinese army?
It
I
doesn't
think it's
matter the
probably
manpower. The manpower is meaningless in these situations.
Yeah, but we're talking about invasion. The point was invasion.
No,
So
you
that's
don't
not
have
gonna
to
happen.
invade them to cripple them. You don't have. That's not true. You don't have to invade them to cripple them. You can start first by unabling their economy, by defaulting and not trading with them anymore, and getting other people to not trade with them as well. That would be the first. Then you
think
can
it's that easy
weekend and divide.
trade with China.
Well, if we went,
And Bernie Sanders and get him really, really interested in communism again.
if we went to war without,
Economy.
if we went to war with China without invading them, that would be a departure from our correct way of war, the Western way of war, which is sort of total annihilation of the enemy. So that would be an unhealthy departure, and it would be similar to the way that we're fighting Islam right now and the way we fought Soviet Russia after World War II. World War II and before, our answer was total annihilation of the enemy. Since then, it's been more the Eastern way of war. Give them a little lick of pain and see if they can come back with you in any way. And it's like, what's it called? Proportional warfare, or what's that called? You know, where they kill 3 Israeli soldiers, so Israel bombs them and kills 100, and everybody says, "Oh, it was disproportionate."
The just war theory.
Yeah, the just warfare theory. So if we start going down that path, I mean, that's what we've been doing since World War II. If we did that with China, it would be a disaster. But why couldn't we destroy and occupy them? I mean, we would be welcomed. The Chinese people would welcome us as saviors from their overlords, the way they did in Germany, Japan.
Welcome you like liberators.
I don't know about that.
Japan, they threw themselves off cliffs because they were told that we were going to do terrible things to them. But whatever.
Propaganda would be pretty strong in China, I think.
Yeah, but the internet's there too, and there's some truth around now.
Well,
The internet.
there's no doubt. There's no doubt if the United States ever got invaded, every single farmhouse that an invading nation would be walking beside, there'd be someone out their window shooting at them. Every single farmhouse. So there's no one that's going to invade the United States. Never. Not with an army.
Yeah, no time, any time soon. No time within the next decades, probably the next century. Before
But
that.
if Hillary Clinton gets in, then that might be different.
Well, what would she do, though? You know, we have 30, 50, 70 million armed Americans. Well, I mean, there's 20 million gun owners in America, and they have more than one gun each. So we can arm minimum 50 million people. Even the American Army can't deal with that, and the American Army wouldn't, because most of them are from Alabama and stuff. They're not going to, if they're told by the commanders, go take away the guns of these citizens, they're going to say no, and their commanders are going to be arrested. So it won't happen. Americans are going to have guns. Here's our problem. Europe's going to fall apart into a state of massive war. What's America going to do when its largest trading partner for the last 50 years goes into a chaos?
The thing is that the military, I don't think, would be taking all the guns away. The police force will, and the police force already has been, you've probably seen it called militarized and stuff. So.
Well, I'll tell you a little story about the police force in America. A semi-truck turned over once on a rural road in Utah, just out, and and we have this very big tax on diesel fuel. And the semi-truck spilled all its diesel fuel all over the road. And it was blindingly obvious that the diesel fuel was for tractors because it has a red dye in it. So they didn't pay the road tax. Now that's a huge federal crime. And a question was raised about this, about who was going to deal with this and stuff. And the sheriff said, that's a federal law. If they want to enforce that, they can come out here to the scene of the accident and enforce it. And that's where a lot of local law enforcement and federal government differ in America. There's a lot of that. So
there is
down to it, the local sheriffs are going to say things like, I've been given an order to take all of your weapons. I recommend you make sure you have enough ammo and prepare.
Yeah, I see. So there's still a big Fed versus state distinction, right?
Very strong.
We also have an organization like this.
Oath Keepers.
You guys
Yeah.
know about that?
The Oath
Yep.
Keepers is a domestic terrorist organization, according to Obama.
Yeah. I actually was looking up not too long ago whether the Oath Keepers endorsed Trump or not, but I couldn't really find a good answer.
I don't
I
know.
was just curious what
I don't
their
know if
position would have been on.
I don't know if they're like that. I think that they're more like just sort of, let's get a group together who all promises to have a gun in case shit goes down. Not really like a group like, let's speak out in favor of this or that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the Oath Keepers are actually police, National Guard, firemen that agree to take the oath. There's like 10 points or something, like, just
Defend the Constitution.
one of the points. Yeah, I'm just pulling it up right now.
I think you have to be retired Army, firefighter, or something or other. You have to be from a list of different things to join them.
Yeah,
Active or retired.
yeah, that's right.
And when I saw the list, I thought, well, I can't be an oath keeper then, but
It says, I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the military of the United States, blah, blah, blah. What does it say? Well, there's a list here somewhere. One of the points is they will never follow an order to disarm the American citizens. That was one of their main promises that they
See, you think that in your Second Amendment it says a well-regulated militia. Now, some people down there are saying that the militia is really the National Guard, but in my mind, a militia, and I think this is how it's defined, a militia is just citizens with weapons that get
what it
together and organize.
yeah.
Right? They get together and organize. They're not professional military. That's not their full-time job. It's a militia, right? Now, but what does well-regulated mean? Because that is attached to the militia. What would be a not, regulated?
I think what the founding fathers meant by that was that a militia that just assembles like a mob in the streets isn't what they were talking about, but a militia that will come together as a group and listen to the local commander or even an elected commander from their own community or something. Some sort like an orderly militia, not a mob. I think that they were just trying to make a distinction between mob, group violence, and community coming together and saying, we agree on this and we hereby elect a leader to let us fight the British or whatever. I think that's the only distinction. But what's interesting is that the leftists say, oh, a well-regulated militia means this modern term of the National Guard, but a gun means an ancient musket. So can you make up your mind?
Yeah.
Does it mean modern language or ancient language? And they just pick and choose. But here's my point. It doesn't frickin' matter because we've got the guns, and just see the left come and try to get the guns. What are they going to try to bring? They're going to bring flowers and try to get our guns. So, all right, Lee Ram, take it away.
This is a funny point, but in Israel, get this. Everyone, men and women, when they are 18, they go into the army, and in the army they carry this big M16 with a cut-off head, with a cut-off muzzle, or an M14 Commando, as they call it sometimes. And they carry it around with them all the time. No questions asked. And if you lose it, you go to jail 7 years. And get this. You know how easy it is to get a gun when you're out of the army?
Is it easy?
It's fucking hard. It's freaking impossible.
That's sad.
That's so weird. It's you're required. In fact, it's imposed on you to have a gun for national defense, but it's impossible to have a gun for personal defense.
Yeah, but a lot of people are armed. They're walking around everywhere, right?
Yeah, but it still doesn't stop it. Like there was a terror attack in a mall where a lot of soldiers are and have guns on them and have the rifles on them. Didn't help. I mean, peripherally helps, but the damage is done. A lot of them don't even have ammo sometimes, because it's a pain in the ass to have the ammo with you.
Well, has anybody heard about the Switzerland's ban on burqas. If you're wearing a full burqa, you can be charged up to $9,800. Pretty good fine.
I want to say something funny.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll just ask because sometimes people want to say. So I have this. I wouldn't say friend, but I have this guy I know in Israel, and he's what you would call a piece of crap. And he's a real piece of crap because he does trouble all the time to various people. And you know why he loves, and I mean absolutely loves, the burqa?
Why?
Because every time he does something and he wants to get away from the scene, he wears that thing and he goes off. No problems, no questions asked. He just wears that thing and goes away. Keeps it in his bag.
Yeah, because you look like a woman. You can't tell if you're a woman or not.
No, it's a disguise. That's what it is.
Bank
And
robber.
it's brilliant of him. I did that trick once. It really is easy. I did that once because I was
Yeah.
helping him do something. Long story.
Cross-dresser, that's why.
Well, when Canada had its federal election, there was actually a couple men, tall, big men, who wore the whole burqa and went and voted and
We
didn't
have
have
that
to
in
show
Israel, too.
ID.
Wow.
Well, I think they did show ID, but it was worthless ID, obviously,
Yeah.
because they had their faces covered.
See, that can't
So
work.
I wonder, can a transgendered Muslim man wear a burqa and get into a mosque?
He'd be stoned.
I don't think so.
This sounds like a joke. A transgendered Muslim man walks
Very
into a
progressive.
mosque.
Walks into a mosque
They're not
in a burqa.
progressive.
Just kidding.
That's a progressive.
Yeah, that would be hilarious.
That's the liberal edge, bleeding edge of Islam right there.
I was saying earlier before I had anyone come on that someone needs to start Muslim, pro-Muslim, let's see, Facebook groups. Muslims Against Terror, Facebook group. Muslims Against Pedophilia, Facebook group. Muslims Against Women Enslavement. And just see
Not
how
a fun
many Muslims join. Let's see how many Muslims join. Well, do you think any Muslims would join at all?
Those will be hate groups. And
Yeah,
Facebook
Are,
groups
of course.
will delete them.
Yeah, they'd be banned, and anybody who started would be destroyed.
I tell you,
Hate.
I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna bring a book by a moderate progressive Muslim that I read. I'm gonna read something to you from it. Be right back.
All right, Andrew the Red.
You
Andrew the Red, can I ask you some questions about? I mean, I don't want to put you on a spotlight, but I think it's evidence of censorship in Canada. The fact that you don't know some of these things. How much TV do you watch, or news do you read? I mean, are you a fair test for a Canadian being informed, or do you sort of not care about? I have to admit, sometimes I don't look at the news for months because I get sick of it. So, you know, I'm not blaming or judging you. I'm just asking, is this information in principle available in Canada, or is it just sort of not even, like, I can't avoid it. Just reading the headlines, I know about the Spratly Islands and the rape of Europe and stuff.
Well, I don't have cable, so I don't watch TV at all, but I do see like Yahoo News or YouTube and things like that. So I am aware of the European migrant stuff. I've never heard of the Chinese airport thing, and I kind of doubt it'd be reported up here. I don't know where you heard that. Where did you hear that?
Everywhere. The New York Times does a story on it every week.
Okay.
New York Times is a fair test, isn't it? I know they're a socialist rag, but like it's not being ignored in the American media, which apparently is up there. Either for legitimate or for nefarious reasons, and I don't think they're legitimate because it's a dangerous situation, in my opinion. But well,
Yep.
yeah, I am a little worried about our little Canadian brothers, I have to say.
Well, there's nothing that's going to be initiated up here. The only thing Canada is really known for is peacekeepers across the world. That's about it.
Like I told you before, I said just, you know, you guys just keep your shit in order up there and we'll keep you protected because we don't want any nonsense happening north of the border, especially now. you have the tar sand. So that's. Do you know about the tar sand? You must know about the tar sand, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
It's a
Well,
third.
the oil price. Well, when the oil price was a lot lower, the oil sands were not productive. So a lot of those jobs in Alberta, that's the province that the oil sands are in. A lot of those jobs are gone. So in Alberta elected basically left of the Democrats kind of party called the NDP in Canada. So their Alberta is really getting crunched. It's really shitty out there.
Huh. Well,
And then you might have heard of. Here's a test for you. Have you heard? Did you hear about Fort McMurray? There was a big forest fire up there, and it burned about. I think about a tenth of the city got burned.
yeah. Yeah, I knew about that. So yeah, I passed that test. Yeah, they also shut down a lot of the facilities. Some of them were far enough away and weren't affected, but their workers were affected. So
Yeah.
and they evacuated basically the entire city, right?
Yes.
Some of it was burned.
Yes.
The whole thing was evacuated.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. No, I keep a close eye on Canada. We're worried about Canada.
Well, right now we have a shiny pony in the federal office, so there may
Oh,
be some nonsense. Yep, I'm afraid so.
he's something else. Traitor. No, Trudeau. No, traitor. Yeah,
Yeah.
traitor.
Well,
Trudeau,
no, the
traitor.
first it's Trudeau. It's we vote in we vote in English types and then we vote in Quebec types back and forth.
He's a Quebecer.
Yeah, Montreal. Yeah.
Traitor. All right. What have we covered the ground? What are we doing now on Islamic terrorism? I try to
I thought
avoid these
Jason was
things.
going to read us something.
Quebec is part of
Jason
Latin
was.
America. This is a fail. Iran, you fail. Quebec is not part of Latin America. Fail, fail, fail.
What's that book? Refuting ISIS.
Oh yeah, Jason,
I've never
go
heard
ahead.
that.
What do you have there?
This is a book by a imam, I believe he's an imam. From on his Wikipedia page, he claims that he is a descendant of Muhammad himself. That's what the Wikipedia page says. He is a school, I think, of the Maliki branch of Sharia, or Islamic jurisprudence or something. So he has written this book. I think he is considered sort of a modern, liberal, moderate Muslim, from what I can tell. And he is basically arguing that ISIS is doctrinally illegitimate and that what they're doing is invalid. But I think it's very instructive to read this book. So first of all, he does say some nice things in here, like he talks about, he condemns what ISIS does for the most part, which is good. He talks about refugees, Islamic refugees, coming into Europe and America, and he says that they should be respectful because because Europe and America are helping them out and offering them food and shelter, and you should show them appreciation and all this stuff. So hey, that's basic human decency. I can get on board with that.
Wow, what's the author's name?
But there's tremendous problems. This now sounds really good, right? But his name is I won't try to pronounce it. It's like, well, I will try. It's like Shaykh Muhammad Al Yaqubi or something. I'll just put that up there.
Sheikh Muhammad Al Kubi.
Yeah, Refuting ISIS is the book.
We all need to get used to pronouncing these names because we're going to be saying them a lot the next 10 years.
So he opens it up talking about why he wrote the book. This is the first thing I want to point out. This is very telling. It's not hard to pronounce, says Levon.
Yeah, so says the guy with a thick accent.
Yeah, the guy who can't pronounce theory. He says theory.
So he starts out talking about in his introduction why he wrote this book. Let me find the line here. Why? Well, I'll find the exact quote later, but he basically says that a lot of young Muslims right now are very, very confused. Like they find the case that ISIS is making to be very compelling. Um, he's basically here to explain why they're wrong. So my first question is, why are people so confused? Why would it be so difficult to be confused about this?
Well, so he's just a symptom. He's like Martin Luther from the 1500s or 1680s or whatever, when Martin Luther came around. It's 15.
Well, except let me tell you the difference between that. When Martin Luther came around, he went back to the source documents, to the Bible, to read them. He found out the Catholic Church was, well, he probably already read them, but the Catholic Church was just making shit up and made up all this political stuff that wasn't in there. The difference here is that these guys are throwing out the source materials and they're making up. You know what I mean? You can't. If you go back to the source.
Yeah, good point. There's no source material to go back through to fix it or short circuit the problem. The source material is
the problem.
Okay.
I mean, you could argue that there's problems with the Bible too. Of course, there are. But I would also argue there's a lot more. Christianity leaves a lot more room for discussion, debate, and interpretation. Even though I would maintain anything based on faith is going to be allied in the long term with force and authoritarianism.
Well, the Reformation was like 1.0, let's question the church. And America was like the Reformation Part 2, 2.0. Like, let's not just question the church, let's just let the church be right about everything, except they have no power. So they sort of stuck the church over in a box and said, we're not going to do anything to you. You do whatever you want, but you can't do anything to us either. So that was like the Reformation continued.
Here's a strange question. Why do so many Muslims name their sons Muhammad, but very, very few Christians name their sons Jesus or Christ or anything like that?
What about Jesus? Jesus happened.
That's not an English name. That's not widespread.
Oh, well, because of Henry VIII, I guess.
What did he do?
He broke with the Vatican. So
the Anglican, was he the Anglican guy?
He invented the Anglican Church. There was no Anglican Church before Henry VIII. He invented it.
Right.
So strictly, he was the father of Anglican. He was the Jesus of Anglicanism.
Well, that's what I was raised with, was Anglican.
Aha! The Church of People with No Arms, according to Eddie Izzard.
Were you raised Mormon?
Yes, sir. True. Any questions about Mormonism?
And that's Utah. Utah is most, how much, would you say there's more Mormons than Christians in Utah, or no? Not that big.
Mormons consider themselves Christians, but it's probably more than 50% Mormons still, but that's a funny thing because Mormons, they're the ones that go to church and are sort of stuck in and they have to do it, and then there are the ones who have found a way out and they just sort of live their life, and then there's a third group who've realized it's all shit. And so there's only actually a small group of people who really go to church and believe and give a shit, and then half of them are doing drugs and giving each other blowjobs, later in the afternoon anyway. So they're all a bunch of hypocrites and dirty fuckers.
Well, that sounds like a lot of Christians as well, Catholics.
Yeah, and homosexuality is rampant in Islam. Just wanted to throw that in there.
Wow,
True, it's true. Absolutely true, because they can't get women. They can't get near women. So they spend their time giving each other hand jobs and sucking each other and holding hands.
Who's this?
Arabs.
Don't publish your address there, Mr. Cropper. You might get visited saying things like that.
These dirty bastards. I've been trying for years. They still don't even know about me.
I guess that's true.
If they gave me publicity, then they would be giving national publicity to an objectivist who has 100 hours of published material. What would the world do if they had access? If CNN started saying this and people Googled me, the world would explode.
The world would heal. The world would be blasted with intense educational material.
Yeah, the ones that could stay awake.
From a drunk guy on YouTube.
Hey, I'm out of beer. Let me just grab a beer. Somebody take hold here.
Well, I was going to mention one more thing about some of the arguments.
Did you find the quote?
Book. What's that?
Did you find the quote?
Oh, no, I found a different one. So he's talking about why slavery is wrong. So he's trying to, because traditionally, ISIS, for example, believes in enslaving non-Muslims, which they're doing for all kinds of purposes, mainly, sex slavery.
I'm back.
Welcome back. So he wants to refute the idea that it's proper to enslave non-Muslims, which is great. Except what's interesting is he doesn't make a moral argument in the sense that slavery is wrong. He basically says, well, the rest of the world, the international community, has banned it in recent times. Therefore, it's in our interest not to engage in it as well. This is the actual quote. Enslaving non-Muslims. The jurists in recent times have unanimously agreed that slavery is invalid and impermissible, except in the case where the enemy enslaves our women, which has clearly not occurred. The impermissibility of slavery in Islam has been established as a result of Muslims adhering to international agreements of mutual benefit for humanity. So, I don't know, you hear any of that, Mr. Cropper?
Yes, yes.
So his argument basically, he's basically arguing against enslaving non-Muslims, because ISIS is big on enslaving non-Muslims, as are many Muslims throughout history have done this. And his argument is not that slavery is morally wrong, but rather the impermissibility of slavery in Islam has been established as a result of Muslims adhering to international agreements of mutual benefit for humanity. So, in other words, because everyone else is doing it, we'll do it too. Like, because everyone else has gotten rid of slavery, that's why we'll do it too. And it mutually benefits us because then people don't enslave us either, which of course is true. But that's not a moral argument, is it? And it also implies that if the tide shifts and they're in more political power and not worried about being enslaved, that it would be permitted for them to enslave non-Muslims again.
Yeah, so it's a pragmatic.
Try that. This is a moderate Muslim here. Now, I'm not. That's the only argument I really found in here. I don't know if he's, maybe he has more to say about it elsewhere. Maybe he makes moral arguments elsewhere. I don't know. But that's just what he says right there.
So he's making a pragmatic, it's not doctrinal and it's not moral.
Yeah, he does refer to a historical event when Muhammad made a similar pact with a local tribe, so they would mutually not enslave each other. So, but also that's a pragmatic thing.
Yeah.
And he says, well, because when somebody asked the prophet, would he do this again, and he said he would. And he takes that as evidence that there's some support for this. But again, it's just support for this pragmatic policy, so to speak. Anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Interesting. Where did you get that book? How did you happen across it?
Someone posted a reference to it. I had got a lot of different friends on Facebook. I actually had one Muslim friend for a while. I have a couple. Actually, I have several. One of which recently just defriended me. I think because I said some harsh things after the Florida attack. Actually, what it was, I posted a picture of one of Faustin's. He drew like a fist smashing through the word jihad, and I don't know if that is what did it or not, but anyway, this person had posted this book once, so I checked it out. I mean, they seem like a rational, moderate person, so I was, um, I would see what they posted once in a while, because I'll read stuff. If people have something to offer, I'll check it out and just see what it's all about. And that's how I read it. So, I
There will be more and more
was very
people.
mixed about the book. Very mixed.
There will be more and more people like you looking for like basic information and something to give them some feet on the ground of what's going on with Islam. And it's a shame that there aren't any Muslims out there. I mean, like, the only Muslim I could think of that's published a really good readable book would be Ayan Hirsi Ali and what she's published. Melanie Phillips and Londonistan was what I was going to say, but Ayan Hirsi Ali is an ex-Muslim. There are no Muslims who are speaking a reasonable game about what should be done about it, which is telling. It's very telling. But
There's I live in the neighborhood I live in. It's actually partial. There are actually a lot of Muslims here. I live between two mosques, believe it or not, in Queens, in New York.
is that the same place that you've been there since is that the same?
I live in a different apartment than when you visited me at that time, but I live very close, just a couple blocks away from there. Now, when I say between two mosques, I don't mean literally like right here. It's like 5 blocks that way. There's one, and 4 blocks over there. So there's space in between. But for a while, there's a Starbucks in the local neighborhood, and there's a Muslim that sets up a bunch of pamphlets and information there outside the Starbucks every weekend for a while. And this is a couple of years ago. I just went up to him and started talking to him and asking him questions. And he said something to me that was very ambiguous. And he looked at me. He said, some people look at suicide bombers and they think, oh, they blew themselves up and their bodies are all broken, but they forget that God puts them back together. And he looked at me for a second, and the way he said it, he's okay. First of all, he was focusing not on the damage it does to other people, but whether it harms the terrorists themselves.
Yeah.
Second of all, the way he said it looked at me, I think because I was being friendly, he thought that I was seriously interested in Islam. And he almost looked at me like he was trying, like, I don't know how to tell you, like he was trying to recruit me or something.
Trying to inspire you.
Like what? Oh, trying to inspire me?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Because his implication was, you don't have to be afraid if you die in a jihad attack, because God will put you back together with a brand new body. And that's what he said to me, but he said it really quickly in a weird way, and he kind of looked. There's a second where he paused and just kind of looked at me like, you know what I mean? And like it wasn't anything too explicit, like but it's like he was testing the water to see if I was interested. But he was ambiguous enough that I don't think that would hold weight anywhere, because it's sort of my interpretation of his body language and stuff. But it felt very creepy.
Next time I come down, we're going to have to go have some fun in front of those mosques. I don't know.
I wouldn't stand in front of the mosques. This is over by the Starbucks. Well,
I did it. You remember the mosque near Indian Street? You sort of leave Indian Street heading east, take a left, and go up 6th Avenue. It's like 6th Avenue and 8th or something.
Are you sure you want to do this under the Obama administration?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it was 2008 or 2009 I used to be in habit of doing it. And And I got called
What were you doing?
I would just, well, after I got done with dinner and drinking a large bottle of red wine, I would take my 2 bags of books that I had bought at Strand and head home, and I would always pass this mosque, and there was always an information table out front. And I would always stop and just, I would say to people passing by, I would say, you see that sign that right there? It says women's entrance around the side. You okay with that? Segregation of women? You all right? And I would just ask, regular New Yorkers, and there was the information table right a few feet away, and I was just, anybody would stop and talk to me or listen to me. And some guy came out of the bar next door, and he came over and he said, now what are you sawing on about? And I said, you want segregation of women? Look, they make them go in a separate door. And he said, oh yeah, you're right. And he went back in his bar and drank his beer. But I never gave him a rest, and I expected to be stabbed or arrested at some point, and they just never got on to me. I don't know. And I had an open bottle of red wine in my bag often, so they could have got me for public drunkenness too, but they didn't.
You'll like this story, and you may have even heard of it if you sound like you watch more news than me. In Toronto, there was a public school, and they part of the day they have some kind of, like, I guess this school had a lot of Muslims in it. Part of the day they have these prayers, right? And so it was either the cafeteria or the gymnasium, and they were in there to do their prayers, and all the boys were at the front, all the girls that were not on their periods were in the middle, and all the girls on their periods were at the very back and were not participating. So they weren't even like doing the same thing as all the other, they kneel down and stuff right on those mats, but the ones at the very back were just standing there, and they're not to participate. That shit happened in Toronto, supposed to be a progressive city, and in a public school board.
Yeah, well, if you want to know about religious people,
There's segregation there.
Yeah, well, religion is supposed to give us some sort of handle to deal with morality, and part of morality is sex, according to religion. So religion is supposed to give us some handle to deal with sex. Isn't it funny how they are like obsessed with sex in this really disgusting, unhealthy way? Like, they're obsessed with it. They can't stop thinking about it or talking about it or worrying about it. It's only atheists who can sort of relax and sort of just carry a condom in your pocket, and that's your sex idea. But for Muslims, it's, is the woman on her period or not? Can she come into the church or not? Oh, I mean, am I making my point clear? Or the Greeks? I don't know. Liram, I'll give you a second. Jason or Andrew, you want to respond to that? What do you think about the insanity of sexual obsession, not only with Muslims, but look at the Catholic Church, obsessed with it?
I think it's all about control of women, and not just women, but men too. I mean, a lot of boys are, molested too. And
Where?
What's that?
Where?
In the Middle East.
Oh, yeah, it's the thing about boy rape that they had in Afghanistan, where the American military was told to stand down and not worry about the fact that the Pakistani and Afghan military generals had 10 and 12-year-old boys brought to their rooms every night. And they were told, don't worry about it, it's not our problem.
Why should they worry about it?
See, there's Liram defending it. Don't worry about that 10, 12
I'm not saying it's defendable, but I'm saying they're not there for the Afghanis. They're there for themselves.
Should we ally and support and aid and abet those generals?
You shouldn't even give a damn. I mean, they're there as a puppet. I mean, seriously, they're there as a... Think of them like your gun. You don't look at your gun and say, well, so they support in the... No, he's there as a hired gun. That's it. I mean, anything else... Now, get realistic with this. Anything else is expecting too much. You're not there to enforce morality. You're there for your interest, not whatever.
What?
It means they'll set people, and that should be acknowledged, but
Well,
doesn't mean they're not useful.
we certainly took that attitude with Soviet Russia. We gave them tanks and guns and planes and bombs whether or not we agreed with what they were doing with their concentration camps.
No, that's a big-ass country. There's a difference between a big country and just a lone general who commands a tiny,
All right.
not even that, a small battalion.
What do you mean? This is what happened. I just supported your point and agreed with you, and you corrected my agreement.
I don't agree. I don't agree with... I
I
don't
never
think
agree with
one of us-
anything you
Can you hear
say.
You don't agree with my agreement with you, huh?
Can you hear me?
Speaking
Yes. Andrew,
Okay,
go
sorry,
ahead.
I thought I'm on mute.
Andrew,
of
go ahead.
speaking of controlling women, weren't you
And not
guys
the fun
last hangout? The last hangout, weren't you talking about not giving women the vote?
Yeah, it's coming.
Who you
For
mean?
real.
You guys are in favor of not giving women the vote?
Well, what's going to happen is in Europe, they're just going to be disenfranchised because women are just going to be, because it's just a mess. Europe's just in bad spot. But in America, we got people like Ann Coulter saying that women shouldn't be allowed to vote because they always vote in bad candidates. So,
I think Mr. Cropper's sympathetic to that position.
no,
Men voting bad candidates too, though.
here's my position, which I don't think I've really
When
given.
his wife is not in earshot, he's sympathetic to that position.
Sweetheart, just say something. I'm right here. She said she's right there. So, here's my position on it.
Yeah, we need her viewpoint on this.
Let's say we can vote in anybody we want, but they can't start welfare programs. They can only do police, court, and military action. There's nothing else within their power to do. What does it matter?
So
But
no
we're
conflicts
not-
of interest.
That's not. That's
So
a
no conflicts of interest, right? So the poor can't vote in more welfare.
Well, no, because it's not conflict of interest. It's that the government can only do police, court, and military action. And if it doesn't fit under those, then it doesn't. Like, there's this poor family that needs food. Okay, who's going to handle it? The police, the courts, or the military? None. So we just don't handle it. We just leave it. A coal mine collapsed in Utah. 9,000 people are died. The town is destitute. There are women and children with no fathers and no income. What's the government going to do? Well, I don't know. Is it the police, the courts, or the military that's going to handle it? None of those people handle any jobs like coal mine collapse. So they do nothing. So guess what happens? It gets handled by churches and charities and people who are bored and have nothing better to do with their lives. They take care of it. What do you need?
In other words, it gets handled by...
Never mind. That's just my woman. More about her.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I agree with you.
So, I rest my case on that. Anyone disagree on that? Andrew, what do you say?
I mean, I think women should be able to vote, of course. I'm not sure what you were saying about that.
Oh, well, okay, yeah, let me continue my thought on that. It's not that women shouldn't be allowed to vote. It's that they have made such a mess of voting, who they voted in, that they've given themselves a bad record, and that people are going to be able to use that against them, and they're going to try, and they may actually get it. They may actually.
Where are the men who made good votes?
Right, that's the question. That's why I'm saying it's a wreck. Don't worry
Vote
about
away
it.
from everybody.
You set up a constitution where you can't violate people's rights, and it doesn't matter who you vote in and why you vote them in, and it doesn't matter whether the people who voted have penises or not. But according to Ann Coulter, it does. And Ann Coulter.
Did you get this from a Stefan Molyneux video about single moms?
Oh yeah.
Now listen, Ann Coulter.
I love his single mom politically incorrect stuff. That's good.
What about Ann Coulter, Andrew the Red? You know about Ann Coulter?
But he's a little too.
Yes, actually, I do, because she came to speak at the University of Ottawa, and I was there, and I tried to get in, and I couldn't get in, and then later on it got canceled. But I was there when that happened.
It got canceled. That's not surprising, but it is pathetic.
Yeah. Well, actually, if I can add one more thing,
Luann.
what was happening at the time is people were saying that she made some joke about flying carpets, something about flying carpets and camels and stuff. And that was enough for Canada. If you say things like that, you're out.
You don't even know what the joke was, let alone if it was any good or anything. That's terrible. Canada, you really are in a little socialist paradise up there. You guys are screwed. All right. Can you all see my screen? Is my screen share working at this time? Or have I failed? Let me see.
It's your face.
It's my face. Thanks a lot.
Is that your? What is this? The philosopher's hat, by the way.
Tonight?
I like
Tonight?
the white hat you got on.
Oh, that's because I just woke up from a nap before we started. So if you want, I mean, I have hat
You
hair.
wear the hat?
I have
You wear the
nap.
hat when you nap?
I wear
Same
this.
pill.
I wear this
What's
hat.
wrong with the nigga?
Viagra single packs. Another way.
Yeah, I don't know why.
What kind of
Every-
hangout is this?
I'll tell you what. I never get anything besides the
Laura.
Viagra commercials. It's the only thing they show me.
Wearing.
Had a conversation.
All right.
that
This
was
guy is
essentially-
failing me, but I hate these things. You click on it, it's Ann Coulter says this, and you click on it, and it's nothing about Ann Coulter. It's some dude.
And
It's
that
the Young
particular
Turks.
dude is a douchebag. I don't like him.
Yeah, it's probably the Young Turks, and those people are assholes.
Oh, I hate the Young Turks.
Riot, aren't
Irritating.
they? But anyways, Ann Coulter does say women shouldn't have the right to vote, and you can look it up. Andrew the Red, you can look it up and find out that those are not viewable in your country, and then you will get a knock on the door within hours that you have been viewing unacceptable material. So
Yep.
Is that true, Andrew?
No.
not
What's
true,
going-
but believable.
Going on up there?
It's not true, but believable. No,
I
they can't
know.
do
Well,
it in Canada. They can't do shit. They send us oil. That's all they do, I heard. So, so what? You guys up there have a socialist
Lumber.
Muslim who's white?
We have oil, and we have soft wood, and that's about it.
Peacock is from Canada. So is Jim Carrey.
John Ridpath as well.
Ah,
Yep,
yeah.
Ridpath's at York. He's at York. I think
lots
was
of towns go
Peacock
south.
Winnipeg. I think
Someone
was
shout-
Peacock Winnipeg. I can't quite remember.
That sounds right. His dad was a doctor in Winnipeg.
It's cold. Winnipeg is mighty cold.
Listen, this new thing happened today. You guys know what happened? I think it was today or yesterday. First nuclear power plant in 20 years went online in America. 20 years.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
So, the Wilkes
What do you
Barre
mean?
in Tennessee. We haven't built a nuclear plant for 20 years.
Oh,
1996 was the last time a new one came online.
How did this happen with the environmental lobbies?
Very expensively, slowly, and carefully. It's in the Tennessee Valley, so maybe it was easier for that.
when was the Japan thing?
Fukushima?
Yeah,
2009, wasn't it? About?
I wonder if that delayed that plant that just opened.
Probably. Here's something interesting. The fact that was in the same article from the New York Times about that plant was that in the last 5 years we have shut down more nuclear power because of the Fukushima nonsense, or the past 3 years or whatever. More nuclear power has gone offline in the last 3 years than we have added in solar, period, full stop. So
Really?
all the progress we've made with electricity by putting solar panels and stuff in has gone nowhere because we shut down some nuclear plants. So that gives you some idea of how useful nuclear and solar are. Literally, by opening up a few nuclear plants, we can replace all the work we've done with solar for the last 20 years. So that's how utterly, utterly pathetic and useless solar is. Useless. Expensive.
I think the environmentalists underestimate the material costs of those panels, and even like we have in Canada, giant wind turbines. They're really big, and I think they underestimate the cost of building those things and how little power and how unreliable it is.
Mm.
Yeah, I think Leram's right. They don't really care. You know the ratio of steel and concrete to electricity in nuclear versus wind power is 80 to 1. In other words,
Yeah.
you'd have to go build 80 nuclear power plants worth of concrete and steel to get one unit of electricity that would come from a wind farm, if that makes sense.
Wait,
Pathetic.
I think you need to flip all that around, but we got the
Yeah.
point.
yeah. Now you mean build 50 windmill thingy-majiggers.
Well, I'm the only one drinking, so you guys take responsibility.
80 windmills for one nuclear plant? It
No,
might be more than that.
80 shipyards.
Okay, let me clarify it. To replace one nuclear power plant, you would have to build a field full of windmills, massive field. Okay? The concrete and steel in those windmills would build 80 nuclear power plants
Oh,
Wow.
interesting.
to replace one nuclear power plant. Now,
Wow.
how much carbon dioxide and whatever fucking nonsense goes into the atmosphere when you build all that concrete and steel? That's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
something.
Yep.
So the only answer is more nuclear, more coal, more oil. Fracking. Fracking will save the world. It saved America.
Yeah, but you're changing the climate. You're
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah, well, we need it to warm up a
It's gonna
bit.
change.
We need it
It's
to.
gonna change.
That's all right. Let's talk about Mars then.
Changes.
Let's send
You
people
don't
to
want
Mars.
to change it though.
You're worried about
See, we are not allowed to change it. Only nature is allowed to change as nature wants to change.
Well, okay, so what if we go to Mars? Do you think they're really, really going to fight us about changing the environment on Mars since there's no environment?
Well, some of them probably will.
They are. NASA already has a line item veto of anything that you might do that might change foreign blah, blah, blah. Environmentalism's already on the moon and Mars, according to NASA.
Oh, good God.
Yeah,
Environmentalism on the moon? There's no environment. There's nothing.
yeah, but they don't want us to corrupt it. Or
It's a dust ball.
they don't want us to infect
Corrupt what? Infect it with what?
microbes.
We might accidentally infect it with life. Holy shit.
Yeah, yeah, true.
The Genesis Project. Spock. The Wrath of
Gee.
Khan.
Yeah, it's nuts. Those are nutty people.
Outside and I can now. All right, gentlemen, listen, it was a good hangout. I am actually going to be heading to bed soon, so thank you for joining us. Anybody want to say a dirty limerick or something before we go?
Nope.
Lee Ram raised his hand. We'll let him give a shot. 1 second here. Lee Ram, go ahead. Give us a dirty limerick or a
I
bad.
have a dirty limerick, but it's in Hebrew.
Well, that's fine. Most of our viewers are Jewish anyway, so.
Alright.
How are we going to understand it?
So,
But our viewers will. The viewers are all Jews.
right. Okay, it's not a limerick, but say Azanti Parazi 10 times fast.
Azanti Parazi, 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 Azanti Parazi. Okay.
You're
You
just
just said I
taking
fucked a
advantage of the
cow.
drunk.
What did I say?
I fucked a cow.
Fuck you. All right. Good
Yes,
night.
yeah, no, wait. Because Azanti is a real name, and Parazi is also a real person name, but Zianti means I fucked, and Para is cow. So if you say it really fast, it's Zianti Para.
Zanti Bara, Zanti Bara, Zanti Bara.
Ah, you said it too.
Yeah.
If you say robber 10 times fast, turns into bra.
Robber, 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 robber.
Yeah,
Robert,
you weren't
Robert,
saying it
Robert.
right. Rob, 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 Rob.
That's stupid.
Yeah, I know. All right.
No, it's not even like embarrassing. It's like, blah.
Good point. Thank you, gentlemen, for showing up. I hope you're able to come through for the Wolfram thing on Monday night.
How are we gonna do that? I mean, is there like a
Are
format
you
for
doing
that? You're
Puro?
gonna give your argument, or
Maybe we should talk about that for just a second before we sign off here. Jason, Andrew, do you know about Wolfram? Are you interested?
I'm interested, but I haven't read him yet.
All right, Andrew.
Yeah, same.
Same. Are either of you interested in physics, the second law of thermodynamics, higher mathematics?
I'm interested. I don't know anything about it, but I'm interested.
You should get Gary Emendem on.
Oh, whoa.
Actually, that guy has his own physics theories, and Puro and them like to talk about it. He thinks that photons are spinning in a circle or something like that. He's got some interesting, strange ideas, I guess. But
Wow, that sounds like the Mr. Green that Descartes or that Newton had to fight against. But
something about like everything is or energy is photons, different like, and the bigger the energy, the more photons are spinning in a circle. I don't know, something like that.
some sort of rationalistic nonsense. Well, Wolfram is wonderful because Wolfram gives us tools to destroy a lot of the shit that's going on in quantum mechanics and stuff. One of the sentences that Wolfram has, and he's brilliant, and he doesn't leave anything to chance. He's very thorough. But at one point he says, quantum mechanics has a problem, for example, with their idea of what a measurement is. Their idea of measurement is just totally confused, he says, and then he goes on. Now, for Wolfram to use the term totally confused as a sufficient explanation of his statement means that it is really, really bad. I mean, like, no matter how bad it is, he would stop and say something very cogent about it. But it's so bad that he just dismissed it really, really, totally dismissed it with such a weird phrase like that. Totally confused.
Well, I'm hoping they come up with some kind of physics that will allow for a warp drive.
They won't. Wolfram's point is that computers will. So we'll go into that, though. I don't want to spoil it all. There's really a universe of computation out there which fits in between the cracks of randomness. And that is what Wolfram's all about, his theory.
Are you going to be on Puro Sing tomorrow?
Yes, if I'm able to make it, if I can, and if I can fit. I tried to go on there several times before, and there was too many. But
Yeah, well, if we start when the hangout starts, then it'll just be a few people, and maybe we can talk about Nietzsche and stuff. So
that would be good. Yeah, we should hijack it and make sure it sort of stays on track and doesn't go on to the whatever the hell they did before, leftist stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, tomorrow night, or what is it, Sunday night, 2 nights away. So let's, no, it's 1 night away now. Whatever. It's 36 hours away. Andrew, Jason, Liram, thanks for coming on.
Good to talk to you, gentlemen.
Liram,
Talk to you next
something
time.
about a fitting monkey, that's fine. So that'll be our sign-off, a fitting monkey. Good to talk to you. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. See you next